We'll go straight into communications, written communications. Board, I have 5 letters. One was concerning C2E policy question. There was a letter from a 5th grader concerning opening of schools. A note about culinary at the end of last week's meeting, a note of thanks on opening to small cohorts and extolling us to open to all children, and a letter from a parent concerned about reopening this afternoon. Did I miss any?
Was one of the ones you mentioned, President Paff, the letter from the Ed 100 Academy?
I don't have something direct from an Ed 100 Academy.
The Ed 100 Academy urging us to encourage our students to apply. It's a leadership academy.
Oh, yes.
They're that up in Gilroy, maybe, or in South, or another G town.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Swanson. Written board member comments. We'll start with, we'll go with Ms. Dawson, Ms. Swanson, Mr. Swanson. Christy.
Yes, I did want to share that Carolyn Swanson reached out to me and reminded me about the option at the Monterey County Office of Ed for a program last Friday called All In for Equity. And it actually, I don't know if this was a 3rd or 4th meeting, but you're able to jump in as members of the educational community, boards, principals, all kinds of folks. I thought it was absolutely excellent, highly inspiring with a bunch of different components. And then there were breakout sessions, and I was able to join the LGBTQ plus and looking at ways to be equitable within the district for that. So it was very moving, and I just wanted to share that it was wonderful to represent the district and be there with so many other people. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson.
Thank you, President Paff. I have a couple things. I went to the principal check-in on the 26th at Forest Grove. If anyone's a Forest Grove family, Buck has been doing these every other week. And last time there was 27 parents on. I really encourage folks to reach out to your principal, find out if they're doing these check-ins. I treat these meetings kind of like a podcast. I turn on my phone, I let it go, and I cook dinner or whatever, just to kind of allow myself to get information from the school in that way. And I really appreciate that Buck is doing those. And also, Christy stole my thunder, but yes, we went to the All In for Equity seminar put on by MCOE. There was 356 educational leaders there, which was wonderful. I'm so thankful to MCOE for putting these on, and I'm thankful to the district for letting us attend them, for sending us to these. They're virtual. One of my proudest moments was listening to our own PG high school student, Mariana Zellen. She's the Diversify Your Narrative lead at PG High. And I know we have Diversify Your Narrative on for a future agenda item. I think it's on March 4th, if it all stays the same. And I am so looking forward to that agenda item, even more now because of my attendance. And then lastly, I just wanted to say to any of the families who are on tonight, we have a lot to go over tonight. And one of the items, which I'm sure you all know, is the discussion of reopening of schools. And so I think President Paff's going to talk a little bit more about that with where that falls into the meeting so that we can be respectful of your time tonight while we also get our own business done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Mr. Swanson.
I'm going to just hold my tongue. We've got 175 people in the room, and which is great. And but I know we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My comments here are related to essentially the discussion on COVID. There's a few items in front of it. One of them will take a little bit of time. Most of them will not. My expectation is we would be talking about that no earlier than 7:30. But at the same time, we will not be starting it any later than about 8:15. So if you're looking for that, even if we are caught up by 7:30, we will hold off on that until 7:30. And if we have to break at 8:15, and then we will break before there. But that is the time frame for that. So somewhere between those two times, we will start that discussion in earnest. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of items that I wanted to comment on. First, I'm struggling because I can't remember the exact date that I met with the students. It seems like my schedule is all over the place. But I did have an opportunity to meet with the robotics club, and in particular was organized by their club president, Annika Keller, and had a chance to talk with them about their newest project in the search and rescue world. And they knew that I worked formerly as an EMT in search and rescue, and then more recently at the aquarium. And so they wanted to get my opinion on some of the work that they're doing in designing a robot that would help. And so that was a wonderful conversation. They got connected with a few more folks that I knew from the aquarium who are also active search and rescue. So it just speaks again, just how proud I am of our student groups who continue to work on some amazing things just in spite of the challenges that are in front of them, and are really just looking out for the world ahead of us. And it was really inspiring. So I wanted to thank the Robotics Club and the work that they are doing. Likewise, I've been continuing site visits to the extent that I can, and I had an opportunity to visit a couple of sites this morning, and as well, just welcoming some of the students in small groups, and just great to see students on campus as they can be, and really positive to see that the protocols that we have put in place are working in regards to how students are being welcomed. So it was nice to see that as well. And last but not least, just wanted to inform the board, because it does take some of my time. I was invited to participate in a statewide anti-racism task force by AXA. There's about 30 of us that are from across the state that are working on this platform. And I think it's very similar to the kind of conversations that our trustees are hearing at their All In for Equity workshops. And so I'll be doing a little bit of work with that at the state level, and hoping to see how I can contribute and bring information from our little PG out into the world. So a lot of good things happening, and I will leave it at that for our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Porras. We go into PGUSD staff comments on non-agenda items. Staff, if you have comments, I'd ask that you raise your hand in some manner. Ralph, if there are people who are literally raising their hand, please do let me know, since I cannot see them.
You got it.
I'll be watching over here to President Path, and later on, just so you're aware, I've got the clock as we move through the meeting.
Thank you. Well, so far I see none. Anybody visibly raising their hand?
Don't see anyone.
Okay, with that, we will move on to individuals desiring to address the board. Public comment on any item of interest to the public that within the board's jurisdiction will be heard. The board will limit comments to no more than 3 minutes for each agenda or non-agenda item, and a total time for public input on each item is 20 minutes pursuant to Board Policy 9323. Public comment will be allowed on each specific action prior to board action thereon. The meeting of a Board of Education is a business meeting of the board conducted in public. Please note the Brown Act limits the board's ability to respond to public comment. The board may choose to direct items to administration for actions or place on a future agenda. Okay, I have some parents with hands up. We will start with Ms. Selfridge.
Hi, thanks so much. I apologize. I was actually trying to get my hand up for the staff comments. Just wanted to apprise everybody of an after-school enrichment opportunity that the PGHS National Honor Society is going to be providing to the elementary schools starting, we're hoping, next week. NHS is going to start doing story time, creative writing, a few art and music courses and a science fair opportunity for the elementary schools. We're very excited to get this opportunity out to the younger students, and the high school kids have put together wonderful curriculum, and they're looking forward to working with those younger students as well. So just wanted to kind of let everybody know that that was coming up, and we're very excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Selfridge. We will move on to Ms. Platt.
Hi, this is actually Mr. Platt. This is her husband. Hi, John.
Hello, Mr. Platt.
I really appreciate you guys are going to have the COVID discussion later. And so I'll leave comments for that time. Is the quote anti-racism quote curriculum going to be available for viewing? And is it online? Can we see it? Because I think there's some pretty racist things in there. And I'm just curious, like how it jives in with, you know, everything else that they're doing. So thank you guys again for addressing the COVID thing and bringing up and letting everybody know the time that you're going to address it so that they can come back if they need to. So thank you guys again for serving.
Thank you, Mr. Platt. Mr. Platt, if you would send Mandy Ackerman, she is the superintendent's assistant, an email with your contact information, and perhaps he can assign someone to assist you with that question further. Thank you. Ms. Sertunk, apologize if I've mispronounced your name.
Good evening. I'm sorry, I'm on poor internet, so I cannot turn my camera on. Thank you, Sertunch, you got this. I have two questions. Question number one is regarding the issuance of the fact that the elementary schools could be opening with the COVID plan. It says that it is a TK through grade 6, which is a middle school for PG. Is there a conversation about bringing 6th graders back to school, since they technically fall under the county guidance? That's my first question. And then the second question is, are we going to have GATE program this year?
Thank you for both of those questions. I think we'll defer to Dr. Porras when he does his COVID communication. Thank you. Ms. Moulton.
Okay.
This is hi everybody. This is actually Steve Moulton, Irene's husband. My comment or question is, well, it's really a comment, I guess, is I'd like you guys, like the school district, to
well, we lost Steve. If you are, Jonathan, can you tell me, is he still online?
Yeah, he's still on and is unmuted now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, what I'd like the school district to consider is following the Monterey District's lead, and it kind of ties in with one of the last questions in a way, and that is moving 6th grade back down to elementary where it should be. Our kids got caught in that change, well, got to be about 25 years ago or more, where 6th graders transitioned and were in middle school instead of staying in elementary school. There's no good reason for 6th graders to be mixed up with junior high kids. There's every parent I've ever talked to about this subject, starting way back when our kids were in school, and now we're responsible for 5 grandkids. No parent I've ever spoken to about it has thought it was a good idea to have 6th graders in middle school. They need that extra time. And now with the COVID situation, there's many students, as the Monterey District pointed out, there's many students, last time they were in a real school was in 4th grade. And now they might be shoved into middle school, a totally different environment than what they've been used to when they were going to, you know, Robert Down or Forest Grove. I think you guys ought to consider that. Monterey's going to do it. They're going to start with the school year, which will start later this summer. And I think it'd be real beneficial for the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Moulton. Appreciate the comment. Brian, are any other physical hands raised?
I see none at this moment, President Path.
Very good. We will move on to consent agenda. Thank you very much. Speakers, thank you all very much. So consent agenda. Items under consent are considered to be routine and/or have been discussed at prior board meetings. There's no discussion of items prior to the board unless a member of the board specifically requests it to be removed from consent. Each item on consent approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adapted as recommended. Board, I would say at this point, this particular consent does not have anything that seems to me to be overly thing. Does anyone just speak up if you have a question or concern on anything?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no problems.
Okay. Public comment.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Christy. We'll take that in a moment.
Sure.
I see no public comments, so we'll take a motion at this point.
Hold on
Okay.
one second. One quick second, President Path. Is Katie Krieger, are you raising your hand wanting to speak?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Okay,
Yes.
I'm not sure I'm speaking at the right time, so please forgive me if I'm speaking at the wrong time, but I just wanted to share that I'm really concerned about coming back to school until I have my COVID vaccine. I'm 56 years old and I'm the main person who helps my 80-year-old mother. I just wanted to share that with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. Okay, let's bring the consent back to the board.
I move we accept tonight's consent agenda.
I'll second.
Sorry, it's not my call there. Mandy, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Path,
Aye.
Trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
Student Advisory,
We need to unmute her.
sorry.
Is Gaddy with us?
I'm one looking and nope, she's not appearing on the list.
I looked through all the screens and I didn't see her. I don't think we had a student advisor or the student representative tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that passes 4-0. Thank you all very much. We move into action discussion. It is 6:50. Our first item is discussion of the California School Board Association Delegate Assembly Election. Board, this is, in so many ways, something that only affects us. I don't think there's any reason to have much discussion amongst us. Is there some preference by anyone for either of these two individuals based on what you know now?
I can say that I serve with David Kong out at the Monterey County Office of Ed School Board Associations. He works with me out there, so I do know him.
Okay, and you would agree that he's suitable?
Yes.
Okay, Brian or Carolyn?
Go ahead, Brian.
And Christy, you said you were recommending Mr. Kong, is that right?
I do know him, yes. I can't speak to the other candidate. I know last time we had the candidate come in person. I don't think that's happening tonight. So I can say that I definitely know David Kong and have served with him for a couple of years.
Okay. I don't know either of them. I read through the materials on both of them, and for me, it was sort of a bit of a toss-up. I was leaning towards Veronica Miramontes, really just because for a little bit more diversity, and then I have a tendency to do that when I'm feeling fairly well even on something. I have a tendency to lean towards female candidate because it feels like we're always pretty male heavy.
I can speak my preference. My preference is Veronica Miramontes. Actually, do know her, and I have seen her at MPUSD board meetings. She's definitely a set of fresh eyes, but she's also very responsible, very professional, and my vote's for her.
Okay, thank you. At this point, is there any public comment? I'm just going to leave this open for 30 seconds to see if anyone raises their hand.
There's a comment in the chat of Veronica being a class act, and the individual worked with her for years.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Ms.
Sam.
Platt or Mr. Platt? Can we have Chris unmuted again, please?
Yeah, I did.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I just wanted to kind of make a response to Brian Swanson's comment. I'm sure Ms. Miramonte is very qualified, but to pick somebody just because of their sex, and it's a toss up. But yeah, I'm just gonna pick just because she's a woman. I don't think that would make her feel great that like, oh, you got the job because the vote of this guy said, yeah, because she's a lady, they're pretty much even, so the girl gets it. That's it.
Well, thank you. And I
Thank you, Mr. Platt.
appreciate the oversimplification of my choice.
With that, we'll move it back. So I'm just going to go ahead around the room here. Mandy, would you do a roll call vote, either Kong or Miramontes? Yeah, I don't know, Ralph, how to do it any other way. So.
I think what the most appropriate way I think would be to have someone make a motion for one of the candidates and go for the vote that way, and like a regular vote would happen.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion that we vote on the CSBA delegate assembly election for Veronica Miramontes.
Okay. In favor, I second that. Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Paff,
Yes on Miramontes.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Yes, on Miramontes.
trustee Dawson,
No,
trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Yes, on Miramontes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Miramontes will be our choice for delegate by a vote of 3-1. And we move on to our next item. Thank you all very much. Our next item, Jonathan, would you bring up Ms. Katz for us, please? This is board goals. Audience, what we do is try and go through things we think are working okay, things that are not working okay. We have an adjudicator who walks us through some of this at a meeting that we had at the end of January to try and act as a better board. And she is here and will lead this discussion. Dr. Porras, unless you have anything to add to that?
No, Mr. President, we have Ms. Kotz on as a host, so she's ready to go whenever you are.
Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then my day is going great so far. Okay, I am going to next try to share my screen here. So hopefully you can see that and start that up. There we go. With any luck, you're seeing my screen. So good evening. Thank you very much, board, for having me here, and Superintendent Porras. We did start our conversation at a board study session a few weeks ago. And since that time, all members of the board did the CSBA self-evaluation tool. And we have the results, and I know that those have been made available. And so what I am here to do is walk you through some of that. At the last meeting that I attended as well, we did the board goals, and we were given some direction by the board in terms of some really pretty minor edits to do. So we're going to go through those items first. and see if everybody is in agreement on how the edits were done. Then we'll get into the results of the self-evaluation and then go back to the goals that we already looked at to see if there's any reason based on the self-evaluation outcome or anything else to make any other edits to that. And then we can talk about whether or not there's any next steps needed based on the discussion on the growth areas for the board. So I can see all of the trustees on my screen, but if there are any other kind of comments, I'll try to keep my eye on that. But if somebody can let me know if anybody is trying to jump in and speak, that would be great. But I will just keep going unless oops, there we go. Unless I hear that we need to slow down. So in terms of the draft goals, the board was very happy with the goals that you've been working with, but had some minor changes moving forward. And so the superintendent and I worked on making those changes. And they appear here, we have them in strikeout so that you can see what it is that we did differently. And I think probably the best thing to do is to let the board members, I know you have a paper copy of this as well, take a look at the changes that I have up there. And then I can go through and see if there are any comments from members of the board on anything that is working and not working, or needs any tweaks based on what you have up on your screen.
So I would say we'll start with Mr. Swanson, Ms. Swanson, Ms. Dawson. So Brian.
I don't have any changes. I think you did a really great job of capturing where we were, and we worked through. I mean, we really got down to the nitty-gritty when we reviewed these on whatever day that we reviewed them. So no, I don't have anything at this very moment. I might have an idea later if anybody else is suggesting a tweak here or there, but no, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson.
The changes look good. I looked over the attachment that came over, and I think you captured all of the changes that I heard at the meeting. So thank you, Ms. Cox.
Wonderful.
Ms. Dawson?
And thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
No, please.
I concur. I think it looks really good. And I also want to speak to the gratitude I feel that we're able to do this. The board members gave up time. We spent a lot of time looking at it and had wonderful guidance. So thank you for summing it up so well.
Absolutely. All right. So if there's no questions or changes, we will move to goal 2. There was only the one very minor change there. President Paff, if you think I should just move on with the one change, I will.
Again, I will, board, if you have comments, we'll start with Carolyn, Christy, and then Brian. Just say no further comment is fine. That's okay too.
No comment.
Thank you. Christy?
Move on.
Swanson? Brian?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, I have nothing. This was a change. This, you know, the first line addresses a whole lot right there. That's a big goal. So that's
all right. The change here had to do with the second bullet and some clarity on what it was that board members would actually be doing in order to meet that goal. So this is what the superintendent and I have come up with.
I still have a little problem with this one. I don't like board members will report on community activities. That makes it sound like anything going on in the community is somehow under our purview. So board members will report on community activities / actions impacting the district. That way, impacting seems to tie better for me. See what I'm saying?
yes.
Yeah, I'm
Brian?
separating that out.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think we could insert a word and probably, I mean, isn't the intent of that to be board members will report on their individual community activities and actions impacting the district? Isn't that what we were going for?
I
But if-
believe that's
Yeah.
correct, is that we're looking to say, you know, when we do something that might positively or adversely affect, that's not true. An action where we're representing the board and actually the community, bring it back somehow, so.
For example, the Christie's seats on various boards and Trustee Walton's help with housing, those sorts of things, right?
Right.
But I think it's a little tweak and insert of a word or two, and we're there.
Ms. Swanson?
I'm sorry, I don't have a comment on this one. I'll go with whatever, changes Christy and Brian want.
Okay. Well, with that, Sarah, do you have the ability to put that together on the fly here?
She get muted out. Hang on.
Yeah, she got muted.
Shoot. Okay, hang on a second. Let me try to track her down.
I'm hoping I'm unmuted.
No,
now.
you're unmuted. Yeah, you got it.
I don't know how that happened, but anyway, I do not have the ability to do it on the screen, but what I can tell you is what I just picked up and wrote down, which is board members will report on their community activities / actions impacting the district.
That worked for you?
Excellent.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Absolutely. Let's see. So goal 4, these were the changes and edits that we discussed.
I'm good with it. Move on for me.
Okay. Carolyn,
Move on, looks good.
Ryan?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, Sarah, I'm going to open up to public comment for this section, if that's reasonable for you, board. This is an action. I believe we're would like to approve the board goals tonight. So with that in mind, but I will open up this section and then we'll end up going on to the next section in a few minutes. Any member of the public wishing to toss around additional thoughts, goals?
I'm seeing no raised hands yet.
Well, okay, seeing none, we will move forward on this. Do I have Dr. Porras? I'd like to go ahead and vote on the board goals as an individual action. The discussion on the CSBA, well, that's not true. Go ahead with the discussion on CSBA, Sarah.
Okay, great. Yeah, because there's an opportunity after that
Yep.
section to make some tweaks. So thank you for that. So the self-evaluation, I'm kind of starting at the end on that in terms of what can or should you be thinking about through your discussions on the items that we will talk about. Is there going to be action taken on something if you guys are in agreement on how to fix or revise? And so these are just some ideas to put into your minds as we're talking through the couple of items that I've highlighted from the evaluation. So for example, sometimes a board may look at some of the results and say, okay, well, we need more training on this facet of what we do. We need more training on something else. Or you may identify policies or bylaws or your governance handbook, which we'll be addressing some tonight. There may be revisions to that would help with some of the issues that are highlighted. Sometimes something as simple as modifying procedures, which may not require board action. So if there's discussion and it seems that doing something a little different in your agenda building process or some other district process, that may be something that the superintendent can go back and tweak, but it's not a written document, so it doesn't require board action to make those modifications. And then the last part is, a lot of times it's just some self-reflection and commitment, because as we go through, you'll see that there are some things that really do speak to how the board acts as a whole. And there are other things that really have as much to do with how people act as individuals. And so in walking through this and you talk through what can we do better, a lot of it may just be thinking about it and thinking, what can I do better? And you may make changes to what you're doing that aren't items that we, that we discuss here. We're not going to vote on whether anybody needs to take personal actions to change their conduct. But a lot of times it is good, because even in filling out the evaluation tool, I think it's a great opportunity for people to say, oh, that is something that I can do a little bit better. So going to the tool, the great news for this board is you had a lot of green and blue answers, which means that it's an item of strength, either for most of the board members or at least for a simple majority of the board. And by and large, in the 50 some odd questions that you have here, almost everything came out in the green and blue, which means not only that you're doing a good job at it, but there's some consensus. So there aren't a lot of big outliers out there. And red is, of course, the items that usually require the most attention, because there are multiple board members who think that it's a problem area, and you actually had no items that were in the red. So that's another terrific outcome. So the way that I was hoping to walk through this with you, although there will be an opportunity for each of you to bring up anything else that you want to discuss having gone through this process, is I'm going to focus on the yellows. So that is, I believe it was 3 areas where a simple majority of the board thinks that that is a growth area, something that you can do a little bit better. So the first item, and the numbering matches the numbering on the self-evaluation itself, and the same with the related items. So number 11 is individual board members do not attempt to direct the superintendent. And there you had 2 people who said often that is the case, and 1 person who said rarely, and 2 who said that they weren't sure. So that's why it came up as a growth area, because everybody wasn't on the, yes, this is something that we do and we do all the time, or we do most of the time. It's often in the results related to number 10, which is the board gives direction to the superintendent only at board meetings, which interestingly was a blue area for you guys. So a lot of times when I say they're related, when you see a yellow or red on 11, you often will see a yellow or red on 10 as well. But it was interesting to me that you have a blue on 10 and a yellow on 11. So what I wanted to do with this is just open it up for the board for any discussion, reflection, how we can do better at this. Any thoughts?
I have a thought. I found this a bit, I don't like the word direct. We're encouraged, obviously, to take concerns or thoughts to Dr. Porras of I don't understand this, where are we going with that? I would say, for me, it's not that I would necessarily say I'm directing him, but I would say I think this is something we need to look at. Now, would I say possibly that's a direction of where we should go as a board? But see, I think it's confusing, and I think that's why you see the contradiction. When we give officially direction to Dr. Porras, yes, that's at the school board, and I think we're solid on that. But I do think in conversations, we have opinions or thoughts or share ideas with him that might be a direction, but not necessarily a literal, you better do this or that. So I think it's confusing. That's me.
Brian?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there, Christy, too, because there's a subtlety there in asking for information, or my saying, gosh, you know what I'd like to see?
Yes.
And I do think, and these sorts of thoughts came up quite a bit just when I was reading through the Governance Handbook prior to sitting down with Ms. Kotz, and then again went through it again this afternoon and realizing some of the things that I could do better, just in the choice of the words that we use or the tone that we may present something. So I kind of get how, and if I'm interpreting this right, so we were on 10, we were more unified than we were on 11. I think that we were probably feeling that we're mostly getting it right, but sometimes we need to be a little bit more careful of the questions that we ask and make sure that a question isn't coming with some sort of leaning or hint towards a direction.
Ms. Swanson?
Thanks. I'm actually curious what Dr. Porras thinks on this one.
Okay, we'll come to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good thought. So, the comment really is, if you're asking for me, if I'm asking for information, we actually have something in our governance document which says, we're not supposed to individually be trying to take up more than about a half hour at a time. So if I say, I'd like a survey of all the football players and how they succeeded afterwards, that's going to take a lot more time, and that would be serious direction that I should not be trying to give to the superintendent. And to me, it turns out it's very easy to do that, sometimes inadvertently. And I absolutely know that at least at one time I asked a principal for something, which to me was just, oh, that's sort of interesting. And it turned out that there was 3 hours work put in. So I think that we just need to attempt to recognize, look, if there's significant effort going into something, that probably has to come from the board. Dr. Porras, I cede the floor to you here.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think a number of comments that are made tonight fall perfectly into play. Of course, as administration, we're going to do whatever is needed by the board to provide information or do follow-up. And I think the primary goal is to try to have those requests come through me so that I can help regulate the workload to the rest of the administrative team. And so I know the trustees are very good about coming to me first, which is very helpful. I think also that because there are 5 trustees, you all don't often know what the other may be asking me about. And so I sort of the focal point and work on balancing out the requests. And there certainly are times when, 3 or 4 trustees will make a request on the same day, just because that can happen. And again, it's just a big time management concern. Want to make sure we get to whatever it is you need, as well as what the agenda calls for. So I think more than anything, we try to move forward with direction from board meetings, because that's our actions that the full board has asked us to do. And when individual trustees ask us for information, if it gets a little too burdensome, we will certainly let you all know and ask you for some time to get that information back to you. So that's certainly our role and what we want to take care of. And it's helpful when you are cognizant of the fact that there are five folks, and each of you certainly have thoughts and ideas that you'd like to share and follow up on. I serve at the pleasure of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Porras.
So, President Paff. No, I'm not sure if you were you able to speak to this? I think that you did.
I did, yeah. I did. Thank you.
All right, so in terms of whether there's any action taken here, actually the conversation to me in terms of facilitating was very interesting. Because everybody seems to be in agreement that some of this really has to do with what directing the superintendent means. Because I often, when I'm doing these, think of that more as, you know, you need to go and do this, you need to order this, you need to, you know, hire this person, whatever it is. And what I'm hearing a lot more about is kind of the information and the time that may be taken up. So I think it was great for that clarification. And I guess I will put out there whether, other than self-reflection, is there anything else that that any of the board members feel like you need to or should do moving forward to help do better at this? Or is this one of those where everybody just needs to be mindful?
I'd go with mindful, that we need to be cognizant that if you're asking something and it takes, things easily take extended hours. And you know, if that's the case, then that needs to be board direction, not individual direction. So, but I open that up for anyone else.
I agree.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And thank you all. Go ahead, Sarah.
So the next item that was a growth area in the yellow is there is a good relationship between how long the board spends on an item and the importance of that item. And again, I kind of highlighted some of the other numbers that are sometimes related, and you actually scored well in those in terms of thinking that your agendas do generally reflect the board's priorities. Board members are coming prepared. And that you effectively use data to inform your decision-making. So those are all areas that were, I believe 2 of them were green and 1 of them was blue. So I think that this is a much narrower issue for this board in terms of where you come out. And at our last meeting, there was discussion about length of board meetings and keeping things moving. And I have a feeling this is related to that point. So, so I would like to put that out there for some comments or discussion as well in terms of whether there are things, whether it's self-reflection or changes in procedures or bylaws or anything else that might be helpful in terms of moving this one forward and having you feel like you're doing a better job at this when you respond next year.
Well, we'll start with Brian there. Go ahead, Brian. Anything you want to add?
No, I'm not muted anymore. Yeah, and I've commented on this before. I think sometimes we just, as the question says, it's like spend a little bit too much time on some of these things that at least I feel aren't as vital, that can be somewhat routine, even mundane, and not all of them, you know, and we can pick them apart, and I think we could just be a little bit more, again, mindful about those things for a couple of reasons. One is because I really believe that we've got a great group of people who work for the district who are very adept at managing all of these things anyway. So there's that. And then also we have all of those great people and an audience often who are sitting through all of these meetings also. And I like to be respectful of their time too. So, and maybe also COVID related, because right now I do all of my meetings in my wife's studio and I'm sitting on a hard wooden stool. So that might've had something to do with it also. In that order of importance.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson.
You know, I'm so new to the board. I actually really wish John Walton was here tonight because I feel like he's brought this up a couple times. I would love to hear his comments on it, but I know that we don't have him here. So I don't have a whole lot of comments. I guess just being new to the board, I'll be aware of this. I mean, it's such a tricky balance, right? We don't want to sacrifice deep discussion. We're decision makers, so we absolutely need details. Sometimes those details don't come until we start digging down. At the same time, it's the balance of moving forward and getting things done. So I appreciate this is being brought up, and I'll just kind of keep an eye on it in my future meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Ms. Dawson.
Yeah, I think we have talked about this. I think part of it is the agenda be kind of foreseen as how long things are taking. As an example, tonight, I know we're moving because there's a big item that everybody's interested in. I feel in the beginning of the evening, we get chatty. We're also a small district, so parent will call about their child and want to have a big chat. And the reality is that shouldn't be at the school board meeting. That should be perhaps with an athletic director or principal. So perhaps sometimes directing people on those personal items that somehow can take up 3, 5, 7, 10 minutes. The reason I think this matters is people are exhausted by 10, 10:30, and I'm talking staff who have to get up at dawn the next morning and go to work. And we have something important to talk to, but the mental acuity and energy is very gone. So I do think it's something to look at and just kind of figure out how long certain things should get. And it's hard sometimes. You don't want to be rude, but if it gets away from you, it's very valuable time that we pay for later. And sometimes more important, meatier items get cut short as a result. So I do think this is something to work on.
Thank you, Ms. Dawson.
Christy, can I say something?
John,
Path, can I say something?
There you
Yes,
go.
go ahead, Carolyn. Yes.
I just wanted, Christy, I appreciate your comment, and I just wanted to clarify something that I don't believe I just want to clarify that when you were saying, certain comments from the public can take up certain amount of time, or when you said perhaps they shouldn't come to a board meeting, I don't believe that you were saying you don't want the public to speak at board meetings. I believe you were saying, we have the 3 minutes and we welcome all public because we have so many folks on tonight. I mean, personally, I want each and every one of them to say their 3 minutes and feel really comfortable saying that to us tonight. You were just saying the dialogue after that because we're not really supposed to kind of go into the dialogue after it. We're supposed to really say, thank you so much for your comment, and then move to the next 3 minutes. I think that's what you were kind of aiming at. Is that right, Christy?
Well, sort of, but no, because the reality, you're talking public comment, and I'm talking perhaps somebody gave a presentation that sparked something that somebody wants to talk about that's personal. And of course, parents should get to speak. I do not mean that. I just mean if there are items that are specific to a schedule for a student or something like that, it should be handled by the principal or a teacher or something. That's all. But of course we want public comment, but I'm not talking about in the 3 minute comment. I was talking about how sometimes a conversation starts at point A and before long we're over at L or M and we're off track a bit. That's all. But thank you. I never want people to think I don't want to hear.
Thank you very much. Sarah, go ahead.
Yes, the question that I have, and I can't remember if this is something that we walked through last year or not, because this is, I believe, one of the items that we looked at last year as well. Whether there's anything that you can do with the agenda or the agenda prep that would help this along, tools that the president can use to try to keep this moving. For example, some districts have estimated times on items so that at least when you're setting them up, there's a relationship kind of between the importance of the item and the amount of time that's being put in. And I'm not sure, I don't remember if that is something that was discussed and just kind of set aside last year or not.
I don't recollect, but I do have an estimated time that I was trying to put on stuff consistently in agenda meetings. So And the dilemma comes up, for example, last meeting where you have an item that comes up after the fact and, you know, adds 20 minutes to a discussion. So.
Any other comments on that in terms of times on items? Because it sounds like the president does have a time in mind.
I think there was a time, at least during, I don't know if it ever actually made it to the printed agenda, but when the agendas were being set, that we actually had in the margins an estimated time. I think and I'm sure I rated us a little bit lower on this than I'm the cause for why we're discussing this. And I think a lot of it is a result of also the things that we're talking about these days, you know, because there's such an emotional attachment to how we're having to do school these days. And so when there's any kind of public comment, it's very difficult to just say what we're supposed to say is thank you for your comment. I think tonight, President Paff did an incredible job working us through the public comment part of it, though, and directing those things that needed to be directed, because with all due respect to the people that are commenting, and I really do welcome them, I think it's awesome. We have 239 people in the room right now. You know, you want to help them and direct them, but what this isn't, you know, it's an agendized meeting, and it's not a town hall, it's not a Q&A, and it's difficult to do that. I think it's something we need to continually remind people about as we're getting more and more new people to these meetings. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that.
Are there any other comments from the board?
I do want to point out, President Paff, that our student representative, Gabriella, is now with us.
Perfect, thanks. Dr. Porras, anything you want to add here?
No, Mr. President, this is a good conversation. Taking notes.
Good, thank you.
So my suggestion
I would
on
suggest
this-
one item that will help control this, Ralph, and it's in our board governance book. And it's been harder in the last year, and prior to that, I think we were much better at it. But if we can continue, and this week was, you know, better than it's gotten better and better here. But if we can get the board presentation materials further in advance, that will absolutely assist conversation. So thanks. With that, go ahead, Sarah.
Actually, I'm just going to, well, Dr. Porras has notes on that. I think that's a good suggestion. And if there aren't any other specific suggestions, I do think that this is something that you could just take to your agenda setting group and say, you know, is there anything else that we could do that would make the board president's job easier in moving the agenda along, and see if there's anything else that you want to put in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I can move on to the next item, which is the last of the yellows. The board advocates on behalf of students and public education at the local, state, and federal levels. This was an item that again was a yellow, interesting, 2 almost always, and then 2 less often, and 1 rarely. And my question with this, that perhaps you can think about as you think about your comments, is what this does mean to the board, even as you're answering the question. What types of things would you be thinking about? What types of things do you either think you're doing well, or that you think that you would do better? So I think there's a lot in that sentence. And that is going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So President Paff?
Well, you know, I'm dialing on my phone here to read this question again on my itty bitty little phone. I guess, you know, I voted that we are not doing this particularly well, and in no small part because I am local. And while Dr. Porras and say Ms. Martinez are advocating certainly at the state level as we go up, I think it gets harder, and it's also not quite as clear as to what that advocacy means to me. You know, I'm certainly not feeling like I should be going to DC at any time to take part in a March 15th advocacy for education. That's not a good use of my time, and I don't think it affects very much. So I'm definitely a low vote on this, but I'm also not sure what and where to make something better happen. I know Ms. Dawson has been to Sacramento. I believe her comment was the March for Education was interesting, but and I shouldn't speak for you, Christy, but I have a recollection of what you said, so I'll defer. So I think the question for me is, what does this mean? You know, how do I do better if I want to do better? And then we'll start with Ms. Swanson on this.
Hold on. Sorry, I couldn't mute. Okay. So some examples that come to my mind for ways that we can advocate. Okay, so a couple years ago, I rode up on a school bus to Sacramento, and I did attend a rally, and it was for full and fair funding for public education. And I thought it was a great use of my time. The reason that I knew about it was because the CSBA had put out something, and then a friend of mine who was on a board in another district had kind of like she was the the project manager of it, and she took it on. I don't think it's something that just happens if we don't take it on. And so I think that if maybe those things will come from CSBA and be like, hey, heads up, there's this going on. But also if we kind of start looking, I realized today that, as a board, maybe we can be looking more to create policy, looking more to create resolutions. When we lean towards something, especially when we have consensus on it, let's put that in writing and let's send that off to wherever it may need to go. Like if we felt we wanted to advocate hard for prioritizing teacher vaccination, then, can we put a resolution together and send that off to the county board of supervisors, like months ago, even if it might, regardless of what the outcome might be, I think we can be more vocal. I think we can unify that way. It would be very exciting to me to have those kinds of things taking place on our board. So that's what I've got to say.
Okay, I found my volunteer. Thank you very much.
I would totally volunteer for that.
We'll go to Ms. Dawson.
I totally agree with what you said, John Paff. I serve on behalf of the Board on Community Human Services. I had a 2-hour meeting earlier today to represent our district. I'm also the board rep for Monterey County Office of Ed, but I consider that local. I did go to Sacramento and I had relatives living nearby, so I was able to spend the night and spend the whole day in Sacramento. I've done it one time. You meet with representatives. It was very educational for me, but to be honest, it was not something I thought, wow, I want to do this every year. It was very, some of the representatives weren't even there, or they're, the person handling them tried to talk to. So that's why I don't score us real high with that, but I also am not so inclined that again, as you mentioned, I want to head off to DC or Sacramento. I'd be happy to go do that. I don't know that it moves our district further forward. I think we're very much, this question gets a yellow because we're very much about local, and that's where I think we're supposed to be. The other stuff is wonderful, but in my book, I'm all about what's happening here with our students and our county. So that's why I didn't score it real high either, but I'm not worried that, it's a big flaw for us. I don't think so.
Thank you, Ms. Dawson. Mr. Swanson?
I'm guessing that this is, that a lot of boards are in the yellow on this particular item, because when I read the question and I think about how fantastic it would be if we could do more, We've got, I mean, I look at our board, right? It's, we have 5 people and we're all super busy. Some of us with full-time jobs, well, everybody with a full-time job in one way or another. We all have full-time jobs. And so that to do this is just really difficult. So I would imagine most boards encounter the same thing. You know, you've got, like in LA, I think their school board members are actually full-time salaried in the LA Unified, aren't they, Dr. Porras?
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
are.
So it's like, I'm sure I would imagine they could do a whole lot more. It would be wonderful. But again, I think it's difficult for anybody to do that. So, yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to interject. Sarah, I think there is an action out of this, which is honestly to let Carolyn and perhaps, you know, we'll find another member of the board to work with you and Dr. Porras, look at some of the items that we might be able to advocate for and bring forth, and then return that as a regular, maybe if not a standing committee or starting committee, and maybe it becomes that as we move forward and see what happens. And at some point, if you can also, you know, if you start that and then bring in, you know, teachers and staff, maybe we can come up with something that actually seems like maybe we can reach further out. So that's where I would be, board. If that's reasonable to you, then when we get to future agenda, I think we put that on in some manner, or at very least we make a note of it. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I mean,
Carolyn?
it's applicable, and Carolyn's excited, or one of us finds something, it's wonderful to pursue it.
Okay. Carolyn, you good with that?
John.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to take someone to weave it together. I'm happy to try to weave it together. And I will say that in my years of advocating for my child and advocating in different ways, you know, the thing about advocating is it doesn't always take a grandiose adventure to really advocate. The best thing about advocating is developing relationships. So the more relationships we can develop outside of our community, the better we'll be off, the better everyone will be off. So that's how I see it. And if you guys agree with me, then I'd love to take that on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Brian, anything else, or are you good?
I think it's great. It's a great
Ralph,
idea.
can you make a note of that, please?
Yes, I'm making notes now. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, I think we're good. I think that answers that and puts us maybe in a better position.
Wonderful. All right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there were only 3 growth areas that stood out from the target, but I did want to have an opportunity for any board member to comment if there were things that stood out to you while you were filling it out, or while you were looking at the results where you said, well, maybe this is how we scored, but I think we can do better. Or I don't know if this is reflective of how I perceive this. Anything that's important. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that tonight.
Okay. I have nothing further on any of these 4 items, so I defer, and we'll start with Ms. Dawson here.
Well, I want to say, I think what you're bringing up is very accurate. What we needed is a discussion, because as the conversation goes tonight, you hear someone like me say, oh, that's why I scored this lower. This is what I was thinking when I checked off not often enough or whatever. So a little bit of discussion is good. I do think next time we do this, it's not fair to have somebody who's been on the board 5 minutes filling this out. And I think we jumped the gun a little bit this time. I think there should be a period of time, because then you get more valuable feedback if everybody's had an opportunity to work longer. And Carolyn just got voted in, and a little more time. But I would also appreciate, which we didn't have time this time because we did this so quickly, is a little more discussion, because what we've seen tonight is a change in direction or a clear delineation of actions. I think that's very, very helpful. So a little more time, and not new board members in the future, but I appreciate the discussion tremendously.
Well, someone kicked in there. Ralph, was that you?
I'm sorry?
Nothing. Okay, we'll move on. Go ahead. Brian, anything further on these goals?
Yeah, just a bit. Again, just an observation really, and I'm glad that we've all had a chance to do it. I think it's a good, first of all, this whole thing is a good exercise. Reading through the governance handbook, it's totally worthwhile. A couple of times it really got me thinking about some of the things, whether they're my own actions or our actions as a group. And it's a good thing to do every year. I also just wanted to thank Sarah Kotz for doing this, the way she handled it, the way she conducted it and led us through it. I can't imagine a better person to do it. Just total professional. We're lucky to have her here helping us in the district.
Here,
Thank
here.
you, Paul.
Ms. Swanson.
Well, even though I've only been on the board 5 minutes, Christy, I think you were trying to help me out, and I know you didn't mean that you wished that I wouldn't have taken this survey.
No,
I know
I
you wouldn't say that. But I know that in board policy, it says that we are to do this annually. And my question was, what months of the year do we typically do this?
Looking very early on, right?
What's that, John?
August, September, to reflect back on last year so that you make progress next year.
Okay, August, September.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we will do one this August, September, or do you feel like we will wait until next August, September?
I think that I am not going to answer that off the top of my head. I think that discussion can come up later on. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, set board goals, set CSBA eval, and try and get that early so that you set things in advance. Never, ever, ever say wait for the next board member because they will have their turn in 6 months following.
Yeah.
So,
Ralph,
with that,
do you guys
Sarah,
do you do a governance calendar annually, or is that not part of your practice?
so the governance calendar is more or less written into the board meeting calendars.
Yes.
And that's a really good question because one of the things I'd like personally to try and do is bring out an actual calendar that shows certain items, pretty much as CSBA has outlined the broad outline. I think that would be beneficial overall and move us into a better spot. So, but we'll bring it back a little later time for sure.
All right.
I'm sorry, my video is off. I didn't realize.
I just knew that you weren't on my screen, but I think that you're next.
Okay. Okay, so at that, it is any public comment. Sarah, I'd like to go to public comment. Are you good?
Absolutely.
Okay. We have walked through this. It's been about half an hour. Any public comment on what the board thinks it's trying to move forward on? We'll give it a few minutes before. Brian, I see no hands. See anything?
I see no hands. Do we want to ask our student representative if she has?
I do. Gabrielle, are you here? Any comments?
I'm here. Sorry, I want to apologize for being late. I had soccer practice and it ran late, so didn't get out until 7.
No apology necessary, but I'm going to get on that coach.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
But I do not have any comments at this time. But again, I apologize for being late.
No, nothing there. Board, Frank Giraldo is, her father is coaching our girls soccer team. Okay, with that, this is an action item. And what we're trying to approve is the board goals. So do I have a motion to accept the board goals as presented?
Also move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion was made by Brian Swanson, seconded by Carolyn Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Paff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes 4-0. Thank you all very much. Ms. Katz, thank you so very much. That brings, pardon me? Okay. That brings us to action discussion C, which is the Governance Handbook. And in general, the Governance Handbook is an intent for decorum and how we act and what we try and do. Part of it needs to be an action tonight because of the changes in board goals, which are listed as an appendix. However, I think that there is probably some editing that would like to be sent in. I'd like to, very, very broadly, if there's something in there that you feel is egregious and you want to bring out now, if there's some comments and edits that you'd like to make, I have some from Mr. Walton. And I think I would like to send those around as an editable document at a later date. So what we would do is, I would suggest we accept this with the changes such as removing President Debbie Crandall, which should be an annual thing, and change the board goals to the new goal, but not really have a very long discussion on it. I think it can come back as a document item with whatever edits we wish to make. So I will go with that, starting with, I think let's start with Brian there.
I'm fine with that. I have nothing more. Really, obviously the changes and who's doing what.
Okay.
But beyond that and the goals, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Carolyn.
That sounds like a great plan.
Okay, Christy.
I agree, and I think it's wonderful to reread it annually and just take it all in. So
Okay.
bring it back that way, the way you said.
Dr. Porras, does that work for you?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. We typically don't look at this until the later spring anyway. So
Okay.
just a reminder, this is an open session document. So discussions that we have regarding the governance handbook would be an open session.
I think Mr. Walton sent in a number of edits, which I'm not sure how many people got them. I'm not sure if it just came to me or not. However, there is certainly some stuff in there which we should discuss further. For example, it says something like, "Thou shalt not pick up the cell phone in the middle, except I'm constantly looking at a calendar." So I'm breaking that every 3.5 minutes now. So some of that needs to be just weeded out because it was effective once, but no longer. And some of it is a little more philosophical. So I think we ought to take this, accept some edits and comments back, and then forward them back around sometime a little bit towards mid-spring, although it's going to be a very busy spring suddenly. So with that, do we have any public comment?
Seeing no hands raised and nobody waving on their screen, President.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion. We accept the Governance Handbook for 2020-2021 with the changes to the board goals and the minor corrections, say, for the Board of Trustees. Well, let's make that, and then an agenda we'll try and make sure we bring it back shortly. Ms. Chinben Dib.
I'm sorry, I put the wrong hand up. I would just want to comment on page 50. I believe there is the change of Board of Trustees. I think the names have to be correct, right? Maybe just didn't get to.
That's correct. That's what we said, is we would go ahead and make that change immediately.
Oh, okay, sorry, I missed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Make that change immediately. But for more serious editing, beyond the goals, bring it back, allowing us to actually mark it up and forward to Ralph hard copies, or soft copies. Okay, that's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion's made by John Paff, seconded by Brian Swanson. Roll call vote, please. Oh, Gabby, do you have any comments?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Mandy?
Trustee Paff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
And thank you all very much. Dr. Porras, would you make a note that this is, we're going to ask for edits of significance, I guess, and try and bring it back. We can set that date towards next year, or we can set it towards sometime in the spring. Okay. Thanks.
Just let me know when you'd like that to go, and we can discuss that in future agenda if you like.
Okay, thanks. And I'll talk to Trustee Walton. Our next item, last action discussion before we get to update on COVID, is, oh, I'm very sorry. Members of the public, there was a walk-on item which I did not announce in public. I did not announce in the public session. We have a walk-on item, which is approval of our COVID safety plan. And the plan for this is to allow Dr. Porras to talk about COVID-19, and as a follow-on to that, immediately bring forth this action item for approval of COVID safety. And all of this is in concert with discussions on reopening. So that is the manner in which it's going to go forward. This item, though, before it is a revised job description for a fiscal officer. Billy, I think this is very straightforward. Board, I'm going to very quickly just go around because unless you have something you'd like to strike or add, I think that reading it is more than sufficient. This would be what we would call a read training. I have no changes on this. I will start with, in this case, we'll start with Carolyn Swanson.
Thanks, John. I don't have any major comments, but I just like to ask anytime there's a new or revision to a job description, I like to ask the person who that job position will be working for, just confirm with them that it looks good to them. So
we'll do that.
As long as, yep.
We'll do that tonight. Good point.
Okay.
Ms. Dawson.
I had a couple of quickies at the very end of this. Ability to, and it's on page 82. Down number 5, C for the purpose of observing. It's not even grammatically correct. I would just say observe accuracy of reports or demonstrate accuracy of reports and documents. I think that needs to be rewritten. And 2 down from it, communicate so others will clearly understand. That's all. I don't understand why you would say normal conversation. I don't know anybody you describe as having abnormal conversation. So I just cleaned that up a little bit. It's awkward. Other than that, perfect.
Thank you very much. Mr. Swanson.
Well, Trustee Dawson, I'll share with you at a different time what an abnormal conversation is because I have them all.
Don't hire on the basis that you can do abnormal.
I've had conversations. I'm still trying to understand years later with people. I have nothing further to add, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mankey, do you agree with Ms. Dawson's changes there?
President Paff, yes, I believe we can make those changes and still hold the integrity of the job description. Trustee Carolyn, I understand your request, and we can continue that moving forward.
I think we can do that now, actually, right? The person this would be reporting to is Ms. Chinben Dib.
Yes.
So we'll
both of us, we worked on this together. So,
yeah.
And that's generally, Trustee Swanson, that's generally what we do. I would be working with the person in charge of, the supervisor in charge of the individual on the job description. But
so I think Ms. Benke has summarized it. We worked at, work on this together. So the key ingredients, is a collaborative effort to make sure we have encapsulate all the key items here. So are we good with that?
Okay. Does that answer your question, Ms. Swanson?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to public comment. Gabby, any comments or thoughts?
No, I do not. Thank you, though.
We'll go to public comment on this position. General public, just to be clear, we are hiring for a retiree come June. That's what the position is for. So,
Seeing anybody?
seeing none, we will ask for a motion to accept.
I move we accept the revised job description for confidential position of fiscal officer.
I have a
I'll
second.
second.
Thank you. Motion was made by Christy Dawson, seconded by Brian Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Path,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes 4-0. Thank you all very much. Our last item of action discussion before we start more serious COVID conversations is board calendar and future meetings. Board, if you reviewed this, you'll notice that there are a number of items that I believe were added. Ralph, do you want to walk through those?
Well, we didn't have any changes, actually. This is, I'm not sure which you're referring to. We made an,
Oh, I thought April 1, we added superintendent goals.
those were made the last time around.
Okay, never mind. We're good. We're good. So if there's no changes, board, any questions, comments?
No.
Nope.
No.
Perfect. Public comment? Give it count of 15. I feel like football, 1001, 1002.
I don't think there's none there.
No one.
With that, this does not, there's no changes, does not require a vote. So we move forward. Dr. Porras, as I said, I'd like you to go ahead and start with district update on response to COVID-19. That will segue very quickly into the, well, might not be quickly, but into the COVID safety plan, which has been announced and has been on our website for a little while. So Dr. Porras, it is 8 o'clock. We are between the hours that I said we would hit, so I feel good about that. Let's move forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will do my best to encapsulate the many changes that we've seen happen over the course of this last week. Yes, I will include some discussion regarding the COVID safety plan. Many of you will recall this under its different title, the COVID operational plan, which was presented to the public back in summer. It's essentially the same plan. And I want to give all the credit to our director, Matthew Kelly, and his support team, because he had the foresight to draft that plan before the questions were even asked. And so lo and behold, when the time came to create a COVID safety plan, we had all of the elements pretty much in place. So we were grateful for that. And we have some additions and some adjustments, of course, as required by the California Department of Public Health. And I will have him go over those changes with you when that time is appropriate. But first, I go ahead and give the COVID update to where we are currently. Lots of activity over the last couple of days. Specifically, I think the public will have heard mostly that the news that public schools are now in the position to consider opening up for elementary schools. There's a lot of confusion out there, I think, between what the CDC put out versus what the California Department of Public Health put out. It's important to note that the Center for Disease Control is a federal institution. They do not have jurisdiction over the state's rights in terms of implementing changes, guidelines, actions, et cetera, as it relates to COVID. Their recommendations are recommendations. And so it's very important to bear that in mind, that there's a difference there. The CDC, I think, did a very nice job of noting a lot of the mitigation measures that are advisable when considering going into a hybrid program versus a distance learning program. And so they did note all of those particular mitigation plans. For example, they noted all of the same masks, social distancing, all of the pieces that we've been talking about, they highlighted again for us. They prioritized the vaccines for educators, obviously nationwide, with a particular notation that by vaccinating all of the educators, it will make it safer for schools to open. and moved the educational plan forward. They also recommended new transmission thresholds. These were recommendations. So if you did not have enough with the local tiers or the state tiers, now the federal government has put a whole different set of tiers. So we have a lot of different colors that have now been kind of laid out there. I want to note that, again, those are recommendations by the CDC, so they were not fully implemented by California. Moving to the California Department of Public Health, this is where the rubber hits the road for our schools. The governor's plan for Safe Schools for All is in alignment with the California Department of Public Health, and our county health department is also working under those same guidelines. Most of the local agencies, pretty much all of them actually, have now deferred to the California Department of Public Health in regards for direction in opening schools. So there's going to be a little more consistency across the state in regards to some of these recommendations and directives. There's a good example, I think, in regards to when schools may open. So I wanted to highlight one difference. The CDC, for example, sets a number of cases per day and says that all schools, TK through 12, could open up. But in California, that same threshold, only elementary schools may open. And you'll see that reflected in the California Department of Health's newest thresholds, where elementary schools only may open up or may be considered for opening when the cases reach 25 per every 100,000. Monterey, as of this afternoon, was sitting at 24 even per 100,000. So we're under that new threshold. So by the California Department of Public Health, schools may consider opening, elementaries only, and they have a series of recommendations that they make in regards to those decisions that boards should consider. For example, they also recommend all of the mitigation factors that the CDC recommends. They also recommend focusing on vaccine distribution and deployment for educators to create a safer environment and a more functional environment for all students and staff. They also are mandating a COVID safety plan to be approved by local, state, and federal agencies before the school can proceed. That COVID safety plan requirement is relatively new since early January. And as I noted before, our safety plan actually has been posted since mid-January on the website, and we have it again for you this evening. So that plan has to be approved before any schools can consider moving forward. Because the plan is approved does not mean that you automatically open. Part of the plan is for you to make an indication as to when you are choosing to open. What's your target date? So some schools, for example, have already had their COVID safety plan approved. However, they have chosen not to open until after vaccines have been fully deployed for their employees. There are other school districts who have chosen to open prior to vaccines being deployed. It's up to the school boards, again, following the mitigation factors and the requirements and recommendations. So the thresholds are a little bit different. I do want to note that we are talking about elementaries only, and phasing plans are highly recommended. That is, bring in your TK through first graders first, give it a couple of days at least for the students to get used to being in that environment, then move on to the second phasing, which is usually second through third grade, and then finally fourth through fifth grade. I think that's a wise plan, and speaking with all of the districts in our county, as well as several in the Tri-County area, they are all considering that phased kind of opening. The other threshold that's of import is the threshold for secondary schools. The threshold that is being presented by the California Department of Health is 7 per every 100,000. Being at 24 currently, that 7 seems like it's a little ways away, but it is notable that prior to the 24 case, the last adjusted case rate was almost 40. So within a week's time, we dropped from almost 40 to about 24. Pretty significant. I don't know that we'll see a leap down to 7 that quickly. However, I will say that our secondary schools are already well underway in preparing for that opening in a hybrid system and understand that things move quickly. So That being said, a couple of things to also bear in mind. Previous to the CDPH releasing their newest guidelines, we were following the older tier system in the county. As you recall, purple being the deepest tier, the next level up was red, and then after that was orange. And that system is no longer really it doesn't really apply any longer for public schools. That system was really designed for the greater businesses can open, schools should open, let's open everything. So we were focusing on that red tier as sort of the gatekeeper for when we could consider moving forward. And in fact, the last board direction was looking at tentatively as a target date, March 15th, or when 14 days after the county moves into the red tier. That gauging is pretty much gone now with the new California Department of Public Health guidelines for schools. The new guideline now is if you are sitting at less than 25 per every 100,000, you can consider opening regardless of the tier that you are in. And you have to turn in your COVID safety plan, get approved, and then you can move forward. That's different than previously saying if you're in the red tier, now you can move forward. So one thing for the board to consider tonight in terms of direction is understanding the differences in that tiering system. The other piece to bear in mind is that as we move forward with our COVID safety plan, that plan is going to be fluid. We're asking the board to approve what we have currently, but it is understood by all agencies that as new guidelines come into play, we're going to have to make some changes to that plan. And as a result, some of those marker points are going to change. And it's going to be impossible for us, I think, to keep bringing some of those smaller changes to the board for approval. So once we have this one approved, the understanding is minor adjustments will probably need to be made. We will report those to the board, but is not requiring board action. For those schools whose COVID safety plans are approved by the County of Monterey, the California Department of Health, and the CDC, then you don't need to bring changes to that COVID safety plan back unless there's a major change in some kind of program. Moving forward, a couple of points I want to note that we have been looking at as an administrative team. We've met a number of times. We have been watching carefully what's been happening with the schools locally in the county and in the state. I think one of the notations that we've made pretty loud and clear is that the vaccine distribution is paramount to the decisions that we have to make. That's absolutely clear. Most of the districts, with very few exceptions, around our local tri-county area are considering that as well. We understand now that March 3rd begins the registration for vaccine for all educators. Very, very happy about that. Great news. I want to give a kudos to our district nurse, Powley, who has just been stalwart in keeping up with what's going on. She and I speak regularly. She has done an amazing job. We are working directly with CHOMP to create a vaccine pod on the parking lot above Forest Grove. And the hope is that we'll be able to open that pod for the employees who have registered through us for that. Currently about 200 employees. That will help maximize the facility and minimize the time to get the vaccine distributed. There are other options for employees to take in regards to how they wish to register for the vaccine. They can do so with their own doctor or at another area. However, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for our employees to get that taken care of. It's also important to note that there is still about a 3 to 3.5 week disparity or time separation between the first and the second dosage. Obviously, that can change depending on science and depending on the administrating agency, in this case, CHOMP. So we will be watchful for that. But we do understand that in order for the vaccine to be fully effective, the 2 doses are necessary. So that March 3rd date is very important. It's important also to note that that is when registration can happen. That does not mean that is when necessarily the vaccines will happen. It could very well be that we register, get things set up starting March 3rd, but may not see vaccines for a week later, which is something that we saw happen in Santa Cruz County. Notably, Santa Cruz has almost finished their entire first round of dosages for their educators. So vaccine is a critical issue to what we are looking at. The other piece that I think became very important for us was taking a good look at that March 15 date and realizing that that date is still too early. It won't get us to the second dosage for distribution to our staff members. That would only be the first. Realize there's a lot of science out there in regards to safety for school and staff, and I think we've addressed all of those in the COVID safety plan. The issue comes down finally as to when we can administer the vaccine for our teachers so that we can get our situation in order. We do have some anticipated state funding that may be coming along in regards to continuing our efforts in making our school sites safer, and again, a focus on elementaries first. There appears to be the opportunity to apply for an up to $500,000 grant that would be applicable just for those kinds of COVID materials and services. It's referred to as the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Fund. The other thing we also know that we need to do, and understanding these timelines helps us tremendously. We do know that distance learning is still a mandatory option that we must provide for parents, at least for the end of this school year. We do need to go out for one last survey to all of our elementary families to ask them to make a final decision in regards to distance learning versus coming into the hybrid model on the school site. Our intention is to provide as much information on that survey so that parents clearly understand what teachers are going to be involved. As we've stated several times over the past months, any hybrid plan that also includes a parallel distance learning plan, there's going to be re-rostering. And by re-rostering, I mean there will be students who will not have the same teachers that they currently have in this transition time. Parents, I know that's always difficult choices for folks. So we want to make sure that it's clear what those choices will mean when we survey them. So the COVID safety plan in particular, I do have Director Kelly who can talk about that. So I want to go ahead and have him just do a quick presentation if that's okay. And I think he's a co-host, and if he's not, Mr. Mejia, if you could go ahead and make him a co-host. I'd like for Mr. President, if it's okay with you, I'd like to have him go just very briefly over what that COVID safety plan is, because it's very critical to this whole conversation, and will speak to the readiness factor in regards to the district. So if that's okay, I'd like to go ahead and have Mr. Kelly do that.
That is the plan. That you were the forward, and he is the novel. Mr. Kelly, please go ahead.
Thank you, Matt Kelly, Director of Facilities and Transportation. Why I bring this up, if you want to look at the COVID safety plan, it's on our front page under announcements. It's under the first announcement. I think if you click on the read more, you'll have a link to the COVID safety plan. And I have some page numbers on here that you can look at and reference. Give me 2 seconds while this comes up. There we go. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So the COVID safety plan, like Dr. Porras said, was originated from the operations plan, the COVID protection plan, and also our site hybrid plans. And we basically were able to put all those together and create a COVID safety plan. And in addition, we also put in some things that the California Department of Public Health and OSHA was requiring us to put into. Starting on page 8, in preparing the sites, we have plans in there for HVAC units, for looking at working in windows, filter inspections, filter changes, installing hand sanitizers into rooms, installing wash stations outside of rooms, more like mass wash stations, and putting in a nano vapor, which is a protective layer on our furniture and walls and carpet that really will kill any type of bacteria or virus that lands on it. And then also some of these things that came out earlier were, flushing the water system. We don't have to worry about that now, but when our sites were empty, we did have to worry about that. If you look on page 12, we have the plan for when someone gets sick. We have isolation rooms, plans for isolation rooms. How do we pick up a child? How do parents pick up a child? And then the cleaning and disinfecting that happens afterwards. On page 14, we go through the screening. We go through how to take a temperature, what to look for, the color code, how to do a visual inspection, and how to look for the symptoms for a child or an employee that might be displaying some signs of COVID. And then we also have information for parents on daily home inspections so that parents can check their kids out before we send them to school, so they're not sending them with any symptoms. On page 19, what happens when we have a confirmed case? We have plans to coordinate with local health officials, and really the county health department that time will be telling us whether we dismiss school or we close school. We have a communication plan, how we communicate with staff, students, and parents after we do have a confirmed case. We have a plan to identify siblings and or same household residents. And then obviously we follow that up with cleaning and disinfecting, and then who needs to be quarantined. And then the plan after the people that were quarantined, how do we end that quarantine time? On page 26, we go through all of our healthy hygiene practices, hand washing, face coverings, social distancing, and PPE, and disinfecting of shared instruments or shared tools or instruments. In our school day procedures, starting on page 35, we talk about minimizing student activity within the school. We talk about when students should wash their hands and what teachers will be teaching our kids when they come back to school when to wash their hands. We have procedures for lunch, snack, and recess. And then we also have procedures on the use of manipulatives, possibly one manipulative per person. We have it disinfected and cleaned, and it's returned. And then obviously our routine cleaning and disinfecting, which is our daily cleaning with our custodial crew and our night cleaning with the same crew. On page 40, we have the identification and evaluation of COVID-19 hazards. This is kind of some of the new stuff that came in to the plan. Is how do we identify them? How do we, who does staff tell when there is an error? And then what are we going to do to correct those hazards? There's also appendices in the back that have forms for this as well. And then there'll be some staff and student training. And then also we'll be keeping reporting and record keeping and access to that reporting and record keeping as well. As we go into pages 43 through 65, these are all of our site plans, and all of our site plans we have ingress and egress maps. We have our hybrid learning model. We identify the special needs for SPED. We talk about physical distancing again, a little bit more detail than up above in the plan. And then we talk about recess, lunch, and restrooms, like how many kids can be in a restroom at a time, and where do they line up if there is too many kids in a restroom. In appendixes A through H, again, this is a lot of the new stuff. We have inspection forms. We have a sample communication letter. And then F and G really are plans if there's multiple outbreaks or a major outbreak. What do we do in those scenarios? And you can read those and go through more of the detail. And then lastly, in Appendix H, which I think a lot of people have seen, it's our frequently asked questions. It's kind of just a sample or a snapshot of everything that we covered in the 83 pages above. And that's it.
Thank you,
Ralph?
Director Kelly. Yes, thank you, Director Kelly. Appreciate that again. And I think that's the document, the COVID safety plan document that we'll be asking the board to approve as part of this discussion. So kind of wrap it up, and then I'll hand it back to you, Mr. President. I do understand, believe me, we completely understand how difficult all of this has been for everyone. I know that it's been hard on families. I have also am caring for a young elementary student at home and understand the difficulties. We are focusing heavily on the best way to move forward that we know will maintain our school open once we get started and avoid the ups and downs, starts and stops that could cause major problems for schools. We've learned a lot of lessons from schools that have already opened, some success, some not. We've learned a lot from our discussions with our partners in our county and otherwise. A lot of those lessons lead me to this recommendation for the board. Again, the administration has recommended the board approve the COVID safety plan as presented so that we can submit it to the local agencies to begin the process of reopening. We're also recommending that the board give direction to establish a target starting date, understanding that things may shift or change, target starting date for a phased elementary hybrid in-person program for April 19th, which is after the spring break, and aligns pretty closely with what several other schools in the area and the other counties are doing. This will give time for the vaccine to get properly distributed and for us to make sure that all programs are aligned accordingly and we can get off to a great start for the remainder of the school year.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have 1,000 questions, most of which I won't answer. I'd like to know, we are looking at an April 19. Let me just make sure I'm absolutely clear. April 19 start, and that's elementary based on the red tier. We have to be 7 and under per 100,000 to be able to open middle school and high school.
Well, not the red tier, but the new California Department of Health guidelines, less than 25 per every 100,000. That's the metric for the middle school and high school. The metric is 7 for every 100,000.
7, yeah. Yes. That's what I think I said. If I didn't, that's what I meant to say. Okay. If we get to that metric, are we capable at the same time of opening the middle school and high school?
Right now, I will say that we will be. We've been working the plans carefully, and they're involved with the conversations.
I am confident we will be there, so we should be planning on that. Mm-hmm. I would say, if we were following the science and we could live with that and dictate back to the county, the CDC's last missive says essentially students should be capable of going back with no vaccines now. And it's unfortunate that we are being a little hamstrung to that. I think the science will also tell us that 1 dose is more than capable enough to start if we are willing to listen to it. And if that's the case, are we going to be able to pull in? Right? If we get to a point and someone says, really, best practice is 2 doses, but with a lot of people at 1, we are above a threshold that allows you to have safe openings. If we get to that, are we capable of pulling in?
We will be ready to open when the board asks us to open in that regards. I think, again, you mentioned earlier student vaccines. I want to differentiate vaccinating students versus vaccinating adults. 2 different guidelines by the CDC.
If I mentioned student vaccines, it's an error. I meant adult vaccines only.
Thank you.
I am not worried about student vaccines. There's so many other questions on that it's there. But vaccines for 16 and older are capable. Re-rostering, okay, we'll accept that. As we talked about briefly, I think surveys, our intent is to open when we can open, and we will survey based asking parents what their preference is. And what I didn't hear and what I think I need to hear is that when we do that, we are stuck for 6 weeks. This is not a flip back and forth.
That is the intent, correct.
Very good, perfect. It's very interesting that Matt said manipulatives because, this is one of these things that creeps up and brings me back to, is there anything that you're missing in terms of manipulatives or balls or PE equipment or something along those lines, which would put you in a position where you say, oh, shoot, we better go get that. And we got 3 days. What haven't we thought about? Have you gone through the list with teachers saying, no, Better
Yeah.
get more red paper.
Yeah, I believe those kinds of issues are being addressed and continually being addressed. Yeah, that's
I know they are, and it's redundant of me to say so. I appreciate that they are. With that, I will move on to Ms. Dawson, Mr. Swanson, Ms. Swanson.
Well, I think we're all very eager to get kids back into the classroom. I'm also keenly aware that teachers and educators across the country have, and here as well, have made it clear that they would like to be vaccinated, both vaccines, so that they feel safe. So I think even though it's a short period of time, I'm very interested in getting kids back into the classroom. And I do have a question, Dr. Porras. If once we start moving towards that, if there are outbreaks, say in other areas, that have a higher numbers, does that affect us at that point? Or would we be on track to keep moving forward with this?
Well, it's county based. So there's nothing, I could not guarantee that the county would not proceed with a shutdown based on directives from the CDPH if something like that was to happen. The intent is for schools to open and stay open as long as they possibly can. I do want to note, we're just past the threshold. It's not like we're way past that threshold.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, I don't think that there's going to be like a hot and cold 1 week to the next kind of change. I think the intent is to try to put in all the mitigation measures as possible to try to avoid that. And that's our intent as well. We want to be able to open as safely as possible so we can be as consistent as possible.
Excellent. Well, I'm absolutely in favor of the deadline showing getting back as soon as possible. So that's wonderful.
Okay, Mr. Swanson.
A couple of things. First of all, can you guys hear me still? Okay, I got off of the stool and I went and found a chair instead. So Dr. Porras, how binding will a family's decision be between hybrid and DL? Have you guys discussed that at all? If they've said, you know what, we're going to go back, and then they decide they don't want to anymore because little changes could prove to be very disruptive.
Yes.
Or the opposite of that, of course.
Yes. We can only fervently ask that parents not change their mind because distance learning is an option that's available to them. Ultimately, they can, people can change their mind. Obviously, it's in our best interest that not happen, which is why we want to try to provide as much information as possible on the get-go.
Okay, I thought as much, but thank you for that. And then Director Kelly, I know there's so many materials that are needed to get the plan rolling. Is there anything, and it's been in the works for a long time, is there anything at all right now that you're still waiting on, waiting delivery for, that it's like, oh, it's going to be here next week, and then, well, it could be another week or another week?
If you would have asked me that this morning, I would have said yes, but we got it today. And that was, we received the thermostats for Forest Grove, which will allow us to run heat and the fan at the same time. I'm sorry, we'll be able to run the fan separate than the heat. So in between heating cycles, we can still keep that fan running. That will be installed tomorrow and probably be up and running by Monday. That was all done with Prop 39 money, not CARES funds, which I thought was great. So our CARES went more towards COVID. Other than that, the only other thing that we have outstanding is the board directed me to get an HVAC person in to give us some consultation and some testing. I am in the process of doing that, and we'll probably need to have Dr. Porras sign a contract in between now and the next board to get those guys going to start that testing. We're looking at installing some either UV and ionization type filtration and which will just kind of bump up our filtration and kind of and really help, because we don't have the MERV ratings that ASHRAE was asking for. But again, I think we come back to, we're looking at now that we're putting vaccination in there, we just added one more thing, so, social distancing, mask wearing, hand cleaning, vaccination, HVAC. We're starting to look really, really good about having a safer and safer classroom. So.
Okay, good. You mentioned that UV system. Is that I've seen different things. Is that the sort of mounts within the ductwork somewhere? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, they have a couple different systems. They have one that kind of goes into the coils themselves, and then another that goes into the supply air. We're looking at the one that goes into the supply air portion of it. It's something that we'll be able to even use as we upgrade our units later on through this bond. It'll be something that will still be in place. So now we're talking about, when the clean air in the rooms will that increase our MERV filter ratings with the new units. Plus, we'll still have the UV filtration going on too. So it'll be a nice little system when we're completely done with it in a couple of years.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Director Kelly. That's all I have for the moment.
Thank you, Brian. Ms. Swanson.
Where is she? She muted.
Where you're muted, Carolyn.
No, she's not.
Not. Oh,
Here I am.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I was saying, I have so many questions. Like John Path mentioned, I commiserate with him. I have so many. So clarifying question. So at the beginning of the year, we had an MOU with the labor partners, and it was looking forward to, in regards to reopening when the numbers went down, we were, there was an option if a teacher or staff had a doctor's note, they were able to opt into virtual learning. Is that accurate?
Teachers, if there was a medical condition that restricted it, yes, teachers could opt to do distance learning.
They could opt to do. Okay. So, and back then when we had our schools closed, we were, it was kind of a three-prong reason. It was because guidelines from epidemiologists and health officials, which I am not neither. We have the guidelines from the state and county. We also had to kind of mix that in, layer that in with our district resources, and then also our labor partners. So it was kind of, to me, it was always this kind of three-prong approach to being able to move forward into reopening. Now the guidelines, which changed so quickly, I was shocked. I was still under the understanding that the Safe Schools for All plan was waiting to be approved by the legislature. And then all of a sudden, boom, it says we can reopen. And I guess that's the fact, we can reopen. So guidelines are allowing us to reopen. As far as waiting for vaccines, I'd like to just hear, I guess, more information about that. I know my concern, I guess, is, if vaccines are delayed, if we tell our community we're going to reopen at least TK through first, April 19th, and the vaccines aren't here, this is going to, that's a tricky, sticky situation, and I'd like to avoid that. So I know that there is a Johnson & Johnson vaccine coming out. They're estimating FDA approval will happen at the end of this month. That's a 1-dose vaccine. So one of my questions is, if we say April 19th, does that mean we cannot open any sooner than April 19th? That's one of my questions. Also, I'm actually in the process of getting vaccinated. That's the reason I qualify, is because I have a child who is deemed extremely at risk for this disease. So I've been learning a little bit about vaccines. I've had my first vaccination. I get my next one next week. And everything I've read warns you that vaccination means it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot transmit. So I just want to make that really clear. And some of the things I've been hearing, just if people have folks at risk or they have a doctor's note, I really want them to learn about these vaccines and what they can and cannot do. School-wise, one second, I have so many notes. Okay, school-wise, we have kids on campus right now. And so if we can just get like a little bit of a report out, nothing official, but if you guys can let us know how that has been going. I feel like that's kind of our pilot program for moving forward into the next step of reopening. So I'd like just a little bit of information. I do believe we've got a couple more classrooms of kids aimed to be coming back next week. And those are the kids who are struggling with distance learning. So I really want to kind of keep an eye on that, see how that's going. I did read through the safety plan. And I had some specific questions about that. John Paff, is this the time for me to ask specific questions about the safety plan?
I would suggest to you that if they are very, very specific, then you write Matt. If they are generically specific, then I would ask now.
Okay.
If you're asking what's the flow rate of the HVAC, that doesn't have to be in public. Okay.
No, I'm not. It's a question about face coverings. So I know in the packet, the face coverings, they're going to be required for kids over 2 years old, if I read that correctly. And I think that what we can do regarding face coverings, because regardless if our staff are fully vaccinated or not, there's still risk, right? There's no vaccine for children. And transmission can possibly still occur, but what the vaccine does help you with is it prevents the severe effects of COVID. So as far as face coverings, I feel like that is going to be one of our absolutely most important mitigation measures. And so there was actually pretty thorough. Matt Kelly, you did a good job, I thought, or Nurse Callie, whoever it was who did the math part of this plan. But there was a couple things I was hoping to see specifically about face hair for men. The devil's in the details, and with COVID, these are germs we cannot see. So the more we talk about the real details, I think we're all going to be safer. So I believe there's CDC guidance on face hair. It needs to be, the mask needs to cover face hair. If face hair extends past it, your mask is not really doing what it should. So I'd like to see some sort of guidance in there in our safety plan. And I think that's it right now for my comments. I'd love to hear from the public. So I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you.
Gabby, any thoughts, concerns, comments?
No, I mean, so far, like, obviously I'd like to be going back, but I understand what's going on now is for the younger grades, but it is interesting to see. So maybe if we were to go back, how this process would happen for us, but I don't have any specific comments or concerns at the moment.
I think based on the rate change that you're seeing now, that at the point in time that the elementaries go back, we will be 7 or under, and high school and middle school will be on the table. But that's an opinion. There's no facts behind it. So I don't know if that's good or bad news for you. With that, Dr. Porras, is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
No, I think we've got as much out as we could get for you. I think it's, as one of the trustees mentioned, making schools run efficiently and smoothly is definitely a partnership. I mean, I applaud the partnership that we have had with the administration, with our classified employees, with our teaching staff. Everyone has gone well above and beyond to make this program work smoothly and successfully. And we want to maintain that positive momentum that we have with our staff. And I think all of them have put in great contributions in the conversation to help keep things moving along and as safe as possible. No.
Dr. Porras, do you think that MCOE and/or Monterey County Department of Health will in fact allow a pod here and facilitate that?
A vaccine pod, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really not. This is already in the works. We've already been working with directly with CHOMP. The county, the health department's already fine with it as well. They're just more concerned about the provider and how they can make things work. So we're a small enough agency that it's going to be, it'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay, I suggest that in no small part because 1 week's supply to Monterey County covers 100% of the teachers in Monterey County. I mean, it's very clear that this is a question of whether or not the county says you really want to do it or not, since they are allocating doses as best I can tell. So audience members, please rate your supervisor. With that, we will open up to public comment. I have 5 people on the list. As always, we will time and limit to 3 minutes or less, the total running time of 20 minutes without further intervention. So Frank.
This is actually Frank's wife, Brandy. And we have a son who is in 2nd grade at Robert Down. And I thank you so much for posting the safety plan. It was very thorough and it just, it helped me just know that you guys are doing a great job. So firstly that, and I read through it today as best as I could with my 4-year-old on my lap. But I did have a question specific to manipulatives. Our son has a 504 plan, and I wanted to know how those would be included in the plan because he will need those if and when we go back this year or even next year. And then I also have a couple other questions which I'll ask and then I'll put myself back on mute. I am actually a Montage employee, and one of the things I found really helpful was their communication regarding number of COVID positive employees and employees in quarantine without them divulging like any PHI. Would we be able to do that in it as a district so we could better understand how many students or staff members are actually testing positive and or quarantining? And then lastly, regarding like families doing health checks on a daily basis at home, specifically when it comes to like things like travel outside of the area or down to places like Disney World or out of the state, are families going to be asked to sign an agreement to these safety protocols so that everyone is on the same page? So if there is someone sick in their household, or if there is some close contact with COVID, are they going to be agreeing to quarantine and not send their kids to school?
Okay, thank you for those questions. You have a child in which elementary?
Oh,
I lost you.
She got muted again. Hang on a second. There you go.
Sorry. Robert Down.
Thank you very much. Ralph, would you have Mr. Keller reach out on the manipulatives? And Dr. Porras, in a regular Friday output, can you touch on the other 2 questions, please?
I can, I need to research some information on some of that. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Ms. Roth.
Hello, thank you. I have a 2nd grader at Forest Grove. So I have 552 questions, but I'll try to limit them. First of all, I'm kind of interested in why the vaccine is necessary for reopening. Is that in the California plan? Is that only a Pacific Grove School District, Unified School District plan? Because my concern is that we're going to delay reopening so that teachers can get vaccinated with both shots, and say only 20% of the elementary school teachers want to get the vaccine. And so we've waited all this time unnecessarily, perhaps. So I just want to understand why all of a sudden that seems to be a requirement. I know we've all been waiting for this for 11 months to get a vaccine, but we've also been planning reopening for 11 months. So I'm a little confused as to why it's going to take 2 more months when we have been planning for 11 months. I had something else, but I'll yield my time to others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Porras, I think if you would write that question down for concern later, please. Ms. Sertunk.
Good evening again. I wanted to follow up also on what Julie was saying. We were planning on it. We were getting ready. Why do we need to wait for vaccines? Schools were open without vaccines, with mitigation measures, very successfully. And it seems like our kids really stayed home enough. They need to go to the classroom. And to piggyback on that, I did not hear the answer to my question about 6th grade. Will 6th grade be coming together with the 4th and 5th? As county now says that TK to 6 is allowed to return. And if no, then why?
So this is not a Q&A. I appreciate your comments. Dr. Porras, if you would like to respond to that at a later time, but our classes are set up K through 5, 7 or 6 through 8, and some consideration of that at a later date. I mean, it's an interesting thought because that is how things are written. Ms. Cheney.
There we go. Great, thank you. I have a daughter in 5th grade at Forest Grove, and I have a few questions. My first question is, I was wondering if there was a date that you had to back out from the last day of school to say, we wouldn't want the kids to come back. Is there a date for that? So for instance, if you're working in a 6-week window or you know, a 3-week window or whatever the case may be, is would there be a point in time where even before the school year ends, you know, the kids just wouldn't come back at that point? My other question is, will there be regular COVID testing for the teachers? And how often will that be, if there is? And then if my last question is, are teachers going to be required to be vaccinated? And if they're not going to be required to be vaccinated, what's the plan for them as far as being in the classroom? And I guess that would go for staff and volunteers as well. If they choose not to be vaccinated, will they be able to be in classrooms or will they just continue to do distance learning? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Well, again, Dr. Porras, please make a note and have Mandy reach out with response if these are not specifically detailed. But I do know that under state law, we can't require teachers for this vaccination. So, Ms. Schultz.
Good evening. I have a daughter who is in 1st grade at Robert Down. And first I want to say how excellent my experience has been with distance learning. I have been amazed at all of the teachers, all of the administrators that have pulled together to put forth a really comprehensive plan that has resulted in quality education for my child. And I see this firsthand. I attend many of the meetings myself. I'm lucky to be able to do so. And I just want to extend my gratitude for that. I have some concerns about this plan. It seems like it's the best we can come up with. And so I'm appreciative of everyone who has put it together. I realize this is a requirement. I do know I by no means think it's safe. Dr. Porras mentioned that vaccines were paramount. But we know that there are no vaccines available for children. We also know that children can transmit, and even people who have had the vaccine can transmit this disease. I don't think that's safe. We have a registration date of March 3rd, which gives us that 6 weeks timeline, which is 30 days of instruction in the classroom before the end of the school year. And it's quite a disruption to be re-rostering with 30 days left of school. I have been really appreciative of having a safe space for my child to learn with the same students and the same teacher all year long. And we've gotten into a great groove. And I would hate to see that disrupted for 30 days of education. I'd like this school to consider holding off on implementing this plan altogether. And I'd also like the school to consider looking even at next year, whether students are going to be opting in for distance learning options to try to make this safe for everyone. So if there are teachers who prefer to do distance learning, allow them to do distance learning and pair them with students who are opting in for that as well. I think safety needs to be our first concern here. And I'll leave the rest of my comments for others. Thank you very much. Kudos again to all the teachers.
I don't know if it's Cassandra or Chris Platt.
Hi, this is Christopher. Wow, just like everybody else, a million things and trying to pare it down. I'm gonna move a little bit quickly. At the beginning of the meeting, Ms. Kruger mentioned that she doesn't want to come back without the vaccine, and I understand what she's saying, but then later on in the meeting, we got down to Trustee Carolyn Swanson mentioning that, oh, you can still transmit this disease, so the vaccine is not going to make a difference for protecting that person that's at home that does not have the vaccine and has some kind of comorbidity. And Trustee Paff, or I'm sorry, President Paff, I just want to say I thank you for pointing out that following the science has been kind of the call for a long, long time for everything regarding COVID until this came up. And then all of a sudden we're tagging additional things onto it. I agree with the earlier comment that, yeah, we're just adding a whole bunch of time in unnecessarily for parents that feel that it's unsafe for their kids. Okay, keep your kid home. For the rest of us, safety is paramount. What about child suicides and addiction rates and things like that that are happening? There's bigger safety concerns than just COVID with these kids, and their brains do not stay little sponges very long. And I'm glad that Ms. Schultz had a good experience with distance learning. We know that the teachers are putting forth a great effort, and we love them and we appreciate them. But overall, the learning is kind of just nominal in there. There's very little learning going on. My children have learned a lot of professional stuff, but they're really struggling in math, science, stuff like that. So please get them back as soon as possible. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for serving again.
Thank you, Mr. Platt. Sorry. Ms. Chenoweth, Mr. Chenoweth.
Hi, yes, this is Sherry Chenoweth. I have a 5th grader and at Robert Down, as well as an 8th grader at the middle school. And I think some of the questions or points I wanted to touch on have already been touched on, but hopefully by me repeating it, we can get maybe how much everyone else is thinking about this probably, and also how big of concerns these are. I don't know if the staff has been polled yet to see how many of them are actually accepting the vaccines or plan to accept. Because being a nurse working in the community, I know that there's about only 30% of high-risk populations in many clinics in Salinas that are actually even getting it. So, speaking to, it sounds like it's becoming mandatory for the teachers to get the vaccines before we can reopen, or at least for them to have the opportunity to get them. Do we know even how many of them want them or will accept them if it's provided? Are there teachers willing to come back without the vaccines? Maybe as, teachers are able to come back, it can be a staged process. If we have half the teachers ready to go, maybe we can start a little bit sooner. April, 19th is getting really far out there, and it is getting really close to the end of the year. What kind of impact will that have if we wait so close to the end of the year? And I'd like to know, why do we have to wait for all the teachers to be vaccinated? N95s work, hand washing works. As a nurse, I know what works. And so I think I just wanted to hit on those points. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ortel.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I'm going to be repetitive because I feel like these questions need to be answered tonight. You have a lot of parents on here who are really frustrated and grateful for the situation that we're in and having amazing teachers, but frustrated that here we are at a point where we can open and it sounds like we're not going to, because at the point in which we open in mid to end April, there's going to be fewer and fewer opportunities for our kids to have that normalcy in school. So again, are we officially requiring that staff be vaccinated prior to school opening? How did we reach that decision, or when? And is that because our teachers union is requiring vaccinations in order to open?
Do you have other questions or comments at this point?
Nope, I just want to know about the vaccinations because I feel like that is what's holding us back at this exact moment.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. Dr. Porras, again, as we put together a larger FAQ, please take note of those questions for us. Thank you. Ms. Giles. Am I offline or is?
No, I've been let in. Thank you. Echoing many of the callers' concerns, especially the first caller who, I'm sorry, I didn't catch her name, regarding the charting of active cases and specific information. How is that going to be shared anonymously and following all the guidelines so parents in the community have an idea of what the updates are if there are active cases among children or teachers or family members, et cetera, is vital to just, information for all of us. And also I'm very concerned about teachers. The assumption is that there seems to be some sort of assumption that everyone is eligible to take this vaccine, and there could be other conditions or circumstances that folks can't. So there needs to be some sensitivity to that as well. And I'm very concerned about that. Also, echoing what Sherry Chenoweth was saying about, the N95 mask and the washing and washing the hands and everything is vitally important. And I want to make sure that all of those guidelines are in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I urge you to review the safety plan, which covers some of those items very quickly for you. The rest, Dr. Porras, if there's items in there that you can address in an output this weekend, that would be useful. I assume this is Lou Zeidberg. Lou?
Hi, it's Jen.
Hi, Jen.
And Lou. There we go. So I just wanted to give you our experience. Our son is 16. He has been back in the hybrid model since before December at the high school because he's a special day class. Sorry. So in his special day class, none of the children have been able to mask because of their significant intellectual disabilities. There are 4 children attending in the class. All of the teachers have been N95 masks. They've all been wearing shields. The cleaning that they go through before they enter the class, after they enter the class, has been outstanding. Every child's temperature is checked. We are not allowed to enter the classroom. And thus far, as I understand, there's been no transmission of the virus within the classroom to any of the teachers or from the teachers to the children. When there was one child who did have COVID, what happened was we were notified immediately of a potential exposure. And that child was kept at home and quarantined for a full 14 days. As far as I understand, none of the children and none of the adults in the room got COVID from that child. As a physician, we know how to mitigate transmission. That's why the CDC guidelines do not include vaccination as a recommendation to go back to school. If you wash your hands, if you mask and you wear a shield and you clean, the likelihood of transmission is so low such that doctors and nurses and healthcare providers who have been working pre-vaccine did not get more cases of COVID than the general population. In fact, we got lower cases. So tying any return to school to vaccination is, it should not be necessary. That being said, vaccination is a wonderful thing. I am fully vaccinated. My husband's about to get his second dose tomorrow because we are the parents of a special needs child and I am a physician. So I want to advocate for vaccination, but tying it to return to classroom should not be a necessary thing. So I want to reassure folks in terms also the hybrid model, the 2 half days that our son and the other kids in the classroom and other kids throughout the district have been returning. It's been a beautiful system. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do distance learning the way we've been doing the whole time, and Tuesdays and Thursday half day, they're in class participating. It's not been a disruption. I think it's fantastic that parents are being given the option to continue distance learning if they choose to. I think that's more than appropriate, but suggesting that the school district withhold education from the whole district based on their fears is inappropriate. And I know that you're not doing that, but I just want to really let you guys know that I appreciate so much your efforts of getting back to normal. Yeah, we can do it. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board, I have 4 hands raised. We are at 20 minutes of full discussion. I would like to allow these 4 people, Light's laptop, not sure who that is, Ms. Shalin, Ms. Bulick, and Ms. McCarty, and close out at that point.
Aren't there 6 up?
Well, there were only 4 when I started that conversation.
Yeah, I see 5, 6 right now.
6. I would say, yeah, let's hear the people who are here right now and,
Okay.
and we'll go from there. Thanks, John.
Ms. Swanson, are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we will stop at Carolyn, who is added there. If what you were saying is, repetitive to what we've heard, please do say I concur and move forward. But Light's laptop, whoever that is.
Dr. Light, that's who that is.
Oh, Elliot.
Hi, John. Listen, I just want to take a real heartfelt opportunity and to thank everybody who's around this table for saving lives, because it's you that have done this, okay? This is not just a frontline worker effort. This is the community that did flatten the curve, as we say. And I would just a note of caution, because we're dealing with some penetrance of variants that we don't know about. We're dealing with some unknowns. We have to be a little bit careful getting back to school, but I want to put a shout out to people who want to get some mental health supports for the children who have suffered during the year, during the summer. I'm agnostic as to what the date is of going back, but there are many unknowns still to come with this virus. And I don't want you to take it too lightly going back to school. We need to have these kids know exactly how to mitigate these, how to wear their masks, how to wash their hands, and how to not pull masks off each other's kids. Anyway, I just want to really thank the community for having made our job easier and saving the lives that you have. And let's get them back to school. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. Shaylin.
Julie, here we go. Hi, it's actually Julie. Thanks. I just
So
wanted
sorry.
to, that's okay. I wanted to concur with the question about, is the vaccine actually required to get the kids back in school? And if so, why? Especially since the CDC is not requiring it or recommending it. And also concur about grouping in the sixth graders, since the K through 6 is supposed to be part of the reopening plan. My question is, once the teachers are vaccinated, will they be required to actually go back and teach? Or can they still choose not to teach? What's the next path? Is there going to be another excuse for not going back to school? I also want to know, it looks like there's not going to be full interest in getting the vaccination. And if that's the case, what is the plan for getting subs and new teachers in place for this year or even next year, since this could go on and impact next school year going back in the fall? We need to make sure the plan is in place now for filling in all those teachers that are not going to come back. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Question on sixth grades is a good question. Dr. Porras, remind me of that later, please, or someone. Ms. Bulick.
Hi, I'm Nicole Bulich. I'm a Forest Grove parent and a teacher at the high school. I really appreciate the district's looking out for teachers and making sure that we have both doses of the vaccine before we return to in-person learning. I know that I am very eager as a teacher to get back into the classroom, and my children, my son especially, is very eager to get back on campus. He does much better in that environment than he does at home. However, I am just wondering if all of this time and energy being spent on potentially reopening this year is worth it, given that we're looking at a maximum of 6 weeks at April 19th. And with a tiered reopening, it could be 5 weeks that we're back in the classroom, potentially re-rostered with new teachers. That seems incredibly disruptive for a very short period of time. My feeling after attending multiple town halls and staff meetings this summer is that that time and energy would be better spent preparing for a strong reopening next year, so that we can get our students back on campus, so that we can come in strong rather than scrambling for 5 to 6 weeks this school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bulish. Ms. McCarty.
Hi there. This is Shannon McCarty. I teach first grade at Forest Grove, but I also am the union president for our Teachers Association. And I just wanted to come on to say that we are so thankful and supportive that working with our administration and our other classified union members as well to really push for the safety of not only the children, but for the safety of all of the employees in the district. And so we really are not saying we don't want to go back to work. We all want to go back to work, but we would like the opportunity to have our vaccination so that we can feel like we're really safe. I mean, there's still so much that we don't know about this disease. It's like the news changes every day with certain things. And so with these variants and things that are coming now, the state of California, the Teachers Association, the California Association is really, pushing that teachers need to be vaccinated. And so we're hopeful that our county is going to put teachers as a priority, because teachers want to go back to work. As much as parents want their students in school, so do teachers. And so I just want to make sure that parents know that it's not teachers pushing back and saying, we don't want to go to school. It's teachers wanting to be back at work and back at school as well.
Thank you, Shannon. Ms. Ternullo.
You're on, Leslie. Well, let's try it again. I think she got me.
Ralph, can you do me a favor and unmute Carolyn in a moment, please, too, and just she can be quiet and wait, please. Thanks. Go ahead, Leslie.
Did it again.
I don't know. She's muting again. I don't know why.
Leslie, you are still in the line here. Go ahead, Ralph. See if that's working.
Yeah, it's okay. I think other people are pushing the mute button as I'm asking to unmute. So
she's not muted at the moment. Maybe
No,
we jump to Carolyn and come back to Ms. Tarullo.
Okay.
Okay, we will come back to Ms. Tornullo. Ms. Taveras, we had already acknowledged that Carolyn would be our last speaker tonight. Carolyn, if you are up, would you please go ahead of Ms. Tornullo and we'll come back.
Thank you, John. Hopefully you can hear me. My name is Carolyn Griebing. I have my last one coming through as a senior this year. Ms. Bulich, you're not wrong. Even my senior admits that, but for their mental health, as soon as we can get them back on campus, you know, they're probably our best at wearing masks and would probably sterilize the classrooms for you if they could get back on campus. In light of that, I agree with you, John. I'm hoping we're at 7 per 100,000 by April. That would be fantastic. And thinking optimistically, I would love to know what that phased reopening of the high school would look like. Whether it would be phased, would it be cohort groups? Could we prioritize the seniors in some way? Some of them have not been stepped foot on campus since last March. And I'd love to see them be able to have something. And thank you very much. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Carolyn. I would suggest there on our website already is a high school reopening plan, and much of that should be covered. If you need directions, sorry, that's not correct. The link, send your email to Mandy to assist. Ms. Tornullo.
Mute. She's muted it. There we go.
Well, perhaps she can put it in the chat if the chat is available. I know we're not hearing her.
Okay, well, we'll take 30 more seconds on that and bring it back after that. Okay. Okay, well, board, let us bring this discussion back after that. Members of the public, I thank you very much for your opinions and questions. To some of those, Dr. Porras, I'd request that as much as possible, you put out a weekly set of basic information, including COVID and other updates. And if we can put some of the answers to these.
Hello, I'm so sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Is this Leslie?
It is.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what the problem was. I was unmuted and I also had the chat disabled, so I had to log out and log back in. I'll go quickly since I know we've already kind of wrapped up. I am Leslie Tornullo. I am an employee of the district, but I also represent CSEA, which is the classified union of employees. I did just want to take the time to comment on this topic. I do want to start off by thanking Dr. Porras for always being so clear in his explanation of these ever-changing events that we're trying to work with, and the work of the admin team and the planning committees for all the work that's gone into navigating this all along. We've really appreciated the district and board support throughout this entire process, and we would appreciate that continued support going forward. We all hear the issues that the parents have that want to be having their kids back on campus as soon as possible. And of course, we share that as well. we all want to get back to normal, but timing is everything. And here we are, and the vaccine just became available. And I can absolutely speak for my unit of employees to say that, you know, everyone feels very strongly that they would like to have the vaccine before we're all back on campus. You know, we're so close to the light at the end of the tunnel, and here we are. It's just like the perfect mashup of things happening with the vaccine just becoming available. It has been brought up a couple of times tonight, some parent questions and concerns around how many employees are interested in getting the vaccine, and we do have preliminary information about that. And it's been an overwhelming feedback of people that are interested in having it. So I think the concern around people not getting vaccinated or not wanting to get vaccinated is very small, if any, employees. So I just want to reiterate to the parents that are listening that, you know, we're really all on the same page as our employee groups and with the administration and everything. And we would really like the opportunity to allow us to focus on providing the best educational setting for the students. And we would all be in such a better place to do that if we had the vaccine before we were able to be back on campus. And in more practical terms, the time and resources and planning that would have to go into this to get us all back onto campus is just not a good use of our time when we could be focusing on the students and providing the best educational setting for them when we do come back on campus. So thank you very much. Sorry about the mute mix-up.
Thank you, Leslie. So coming back, Dr. Porras, if you can put together a FAQ with as many answers as are reasonable, certain things are, we know right now, certain things we'll never know. For example, we know employees that have had cases, and we could potentially think about putting that out in a anonymous manner. We certainly are not going to know about parents of children. That's not in our domain. The fundamental question remains, I think, you know, April 19, I think Carolyn touched on this. Is this a hard date? And we're going to strive for that no matter what. Can we bring it in? Which I think I asked very early on. At what point do we say science allows us to try and bring it in a little bit? You know, most particularly, one dose appears to be sufficient to do practically everything. So if that recommendation comes in, I believe we should be attempting to follow it. So with that, board, I will go back around. We'll start with Ms. Dawson, Ms. Swanson, Mr. Swanson.
Well, I think it's very interesting to hear from parents. I mean, we've run the whole gamut this evening. There are people that would like to stick with distance learning, and there are people that are frustrated and want to get the kids back into class. It's been fluid from the beginning of this, and it's difficult. I'm happy to hear the response of staff wanting to be vaccinated, because it would be beyond frustrating to get ready and poised to go back in and then hear that a bunch don't want it, which has been kind of rumored. So it's nice to get that set straight. I vote as soon as we can get back. I'll repeat the April 19th. It isn't like anybody would have wanted to wait this long, but after hearing everything, that's where I would land. Thank you.
Ms. Swanson?
Thanks, John. I do have a quick clarifying question regarding COVID testing. Is our approach going to be like a screening approach, which, according to all the reading I've been doing, is defined as essentially test everybody every certain amount of time? Or are we going to have a diagnostic approach where we test when there are request a test or request that the folks get tested when they have symptoms? I have that question first of all.
Okay, let us answer that question. Dr. Porras or Mr. Kelly, are you willing to take that on?
Well, I think, yes, I can answer that pretty much. It's going to be more of a diagnostic approach. The mandatory testing was part of the old waiver program for the deep purple zone. And then also, if they're in that zone and we're applying for the incentive grants, that is not a requirement by the California Department of Health to do. We have in our plans working on a diagnostic approach. We're also working very hard to try and land with a testing agency that will help provide cost-effective testing so that if we can get to a greater amount of testing, we can do it. Assistant Superintendent Chin Ben Dib has been working daily on this, and it's scattered to say the least. The cost, it's cost prohibitive to a certain extent to test every teacher, every student. So right now, diagnostic, that's the direction we're heading.
Okay, thanks, Ralph. Yeah, just going back, there's so many pros and cons to all of this. And my biggest concern with going back is the utter disruption, the re-rostering, the trying to get that all sorted out, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. So tonight, I believe we're voting on whether or not to approve the COVID safety plan. And then also maybe giving a little bit of direction on the going back date. So I'm just processing all that right now. Those are my comments.
Okay, that is correct. The only thing we would be approving right now is the COVID safety plan to allow us to present to Monterey County Department. MCOE or MCDH?
It's going to be the Department of Health, the California Department of Public Health, and the CDC.
Yeah. So, Brian.
Well, in the broadest of strokes, looking at the plan, I'm most certainly in favor of approving that, and and I like the idea of April. I understand that there are tons of different viewpoints on this as to when we try to get people back, and there's no ideal or right answer to that. This has been, I'm stating the obvious here, but it's been difficult for everybody, and everybody's working twice as hard. I want to make note in particular, though, that it's like when people talk about teachers going back to work, they're already at work. They're just working from a different place. And I know the parents are working twice as hard too now, because they're in the thick of it with having to help and do all of this too. So yeah, I wish I had $1 for every time I said this is not ideal. Obviously, this is not ideal. We're closer. We have a bright spot on the horizon to look forward to. I think that's going to do wonders for people's mental state. It's helping mine. It's helping friends of mine to know that there's something that's happening, and we're closer. We have to just embrace that and do what we've done so far, which is an incredible amount of preparation, and hope that we don't run into any potholes in the road along the way. And there will be one or two. We know that. I mean, you see what happened in Texas this week, right? That will impact the whole country to a certain degree by a couple of days or a week, and there will be other things, but we are getting closer. Let's embrace that. Let's look to the light on the horizon. That's all.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Porras, what is our April break?
It is April the 12th through the 16th. The 19th
12th through the 16th. Okay. Is there a break in March?
No, sir.
Okay. So right now we would go through until April, 3 days before that, 9th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Board, I'd like to bring forth just the one item very quickly. Well, it's not quickly, but I'd like to make a motion to approve the COVID safety plan as presented.
Seconded.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Path,
Aye.
Trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
Student Advisory.
Aye, but before we move on from this, it can be after the vote, but I just had a few questions. just
Absolutely,
more
Gabby.
specifically related to the high school, but I is my vote for this.
Thank you. We will come right back to you, and you should interrupt me when I blow it.
No worries.
So Gabby, comments, please.
Okay, so I'm looking, this is a little more about the high school, so sorry, this is a bit of a digression, I'll keep it brief, but I was looking at the plan for the high school and it seems more like a generic plan. So when will we go into like the more in-depth plan for the April 19th opening date or possible opening date? Like, will we, when we get closer to that time, we're gonna have a more specific plan for the high school, like to determine how the A and B groups are gonna be separated?
If I may, Mr. President, I can call on Principal Garcia to help answer that question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Lito Garcia, Principal, Pacific Grove High School and Community High. Great question, Gabby. Thanks for that. As was mentioned earlier, we will be sending out a survey to determine which families will choose to stay in distance learning. Based on that information, we will then make a determination as to what our alpha split will be. We want to ensure that we have a good ratio and that we maintain small groups within each classroom. So more information to come on that, but we will have plenty of, I feel, we will have plenty of time to inform our high school families as to which group they will fall into.
Okay, thank you. So once that survey's out and we receive the results, there'll be an updated plan, which will be discussed at the board meeting, then also updated on the website.
Correct. And information will be sent directly to families to notify them as to which group they will fall into.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course.
Other questions?
Hey, John.
Yes.
Just, we have so many folks on the call and we just approved the COVID safety plan. Do you mind just recapping what exactly that means, what the steps moving forward are on that?
That's where we're going here. So
okay.
What that allows us to do is we submit this to two agencies actually. And this should be an allowance to, if we get to certain levels, it allows us to consider opening elementary, and beyond that allows us to consider opening middle school and high school. If this is not approved by Monterey County Department of Health, and they have something like an 8-day window, although I've read that once, so maybe it's not true. They need to approve it before we can bring anyone back, more or less. So this initializes that process for us. So we have to give approval. The county then has to say, yes, we approve. And that puts us in a position where we can, at a later date, bring children back onto campus. Dr. Porras, have I missed anything in that?
No, that's correct. The agencies that we would be sending this to is indeed the County Health Department, the Monterey County Office of Education, and the California Department of Public Health, who will represent federal as well.
I am 100% confident they will approve it, simply because we've spent a lot of time and it's a very viable plan. So we talked briefly, there was a question somewhere in there about, planning for reopening. Actually, we have plans on the website as to actually what the A and B cohorts look like initially. We will be following that plan at any point in time where we pull this and move it on. We would be following that plan. Board, I have heard 3 people say the 19th seems like an appropriate date. I would suggest that the 19th is the outset date. And if there is opportunity to bring that in at any time, and we have 2 weeks of availability to do so, that we do in fact bring it in. There is some parts of this, we're well ahead in so many ways. We have fixed windows and we have an HVAC plan and we have temperature, we have thermometers. We have 100,000 PPE is my understanding, ready to go. These are waiting for us to use. And, it's a difficult thing to say, well, we're going to do it tomorrow. We're not going to be able to do it tomorrow. But the earliest possible would be my recommendation. And if that means we pull this based on better information, we pull it on better information. So That said, it is direction. Are we giving direction then to Ralph to submit the COVID safety plan? I think the answer is yes. Board, are we in agreement? Just say yes.
Yes.
Okay. The rest of it, what's the direction you want to provide for opening elementaries? Plan on the 19th?
Can we, President Paff, forgive me, but just the mechanics of a meeting, is this something we can vote on? It wasn't in the agenda.
It's not a vote. What we're telling him is at a later date, he needs to come back with a full-blown, we're going to open here and why. But if we say, well, we don't even want you to try to do it because of other things. I mean, basically you're saying, look, you need this information to come back to us so that we can actually give you that authority to open the school. Does that make sense?
Okay, so you're asking for a vote, but it's more just.
It's direction. Right?
Direction. This is what
Right.
was on that.
We want to survey. Start the survey. We're not telling you what it looks like.
Got it.
We're not telling you how we're going to respond, but have that out there. The path that was set forth was 19th. I would say at our earliest that we can do it.
Well, I appreciate you saying at our earliest, but I think we need to aim at the 19th. Teachers, you can't do stuff on the fly like this. I mean, there's going to start moving towards that. There's a vacation the week before, and vaccine won't start last week. It can't start till after the 3rd. It might be a week later. So I think it's the thought is nice, but I think we aim at the 19th.
As somebody who has been at work every single day without a vaccine and in combination, and there's a hell of a lot of cancer treatment patients that are happy that we were there, you know, it can be done. So anyway. Ralph, what else do you need from us?
Well, I guess I still need a little clarity. What I'm hearing you say is the outset date of April 19th, but if we can come back sooner, we will attempt to do so.
If things change, we are not beholden to that date. If they come in and there are other rationale to allow people on faster, we should not hesitate to bring it back to us to say that.
Right, understood.
Okay.
But it's but I'm hearing direction from the board. I'm aiming for a phased elementary hybrid in-person program, April 19th is the target date.
Board, is that a true statement?
And sooner if possible.
It's a true statement to me.
Okay.
Ralph, when you say phased in, oh, sorry, Christy. Ralph, when you say phased in, I remember reading in something that you were meaning kind of 2 days in between kind of the batch of grades that we're phasing in. So it would take, I think there was 3 batches. So it would take roughly 6 working days to phase that in. Is that correct? Maybe roughly a week and a half?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there are some districts that are doing a week full of phasing between grade levels, which is probably too long. But a couple of days in between is certainly reasonable.
Okay.
Anything
yeah,
else?
I think, go ahead, John.
I was simply asking if you had other stuff.
Just one other thing. My 2 cents on the 19th is if we aim for it, I think it does give our staff peace of mind. And I think I think they have been working harder this year than any other year. I think our parents have been working harder this year than any other year. So I think the 19th is a kind of a compromise, I guess, a way for us to have, like Brian was saying, a light at the end of the tunnel, and also kind of add this hybrid option for folks who truly need it, because there are folks who are truly needing it and looking forward to that, may really brighten their day. And yeah, so I think I appreciate what you're saying, John, about earlier, because you have been going to work every day, and some of the science supports that it could be earlier, but I think we do need to try to stick to a solid date for the peace of mind. and for the ultimate education product. You know, we're not trying to be willy-nilly. We're not trying to start up and then wish that we had more time, or start up and then unfortunately close. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to do this right. So I think 19th is a good idea.
Okay. Ms. Dawson, you talked a moment ago. Are you still good, or you?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, thanks. Ralph, do you have enough direction there?
I do indeed. Thank you very much. I appreciate getting the information from you, and appreciate all the public comments. We totally are taking all of it into consideration, and we will continue with our efforts.
There was one item brought out, which it's always good. Our sixth graders have not, in fact, been in the middle school. And actually, if nothing else, sometime during this year, we need to consider. Well, never mind. I don't know where I'm going with that, so let's stop. Okay, I have a raised hand. The time for public comment on this was over, so I am going to move on, quite frankly. Ms. Roth, I apologize, but we're going to continue our business meeting here. So we do have two other items. We have about 22 minutes. And okay, so action discussion B, district review of distance learning. Dr. Porras, board, if you recollect, this was brought and there was a full presentation made from every site as to things that were there. And then the board requested the actual, well, first of all, we requested the view graphs, and second, we requested as much data as we could, including comments, which we received. And it was intended to be an anonymous survey, so we will keep that. But I think, and Ralph, unless you want to add something here, we'll open it up quickly.
No, I think we covered everything that was asked. I know that this was brought back onto this agenda by the trustees' request, so we are at your disposal. Okay.
With that said, the most critical thing to me is the curve of responses, which vary from DL is working great and I'm wondering how to keep my child in it forever, to this is the worst year I've had ever. And that range of response is, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing to say about it other than that it covers the entire gambit. I think we have a fair number of people who have said, you're really doing a good job. Some of them put a caveat given the circumstances. I appreciate all of our staff, all of our admin bringing us back this information. Thank you for sending it out. And I really appreciate the parents for their honestness in trying to respond. So with that, I move on to our next person. We'll go Brian, Carolyn, Christy here.
That was probably nothing that I didn't say last week or that you didn't already immediately touch upon, President Paff. It's interesting to see how it's working great for some people, better than ever, and for others it's just fine. The one that I find most troubling is for the students and the parents that it's not working for. For some of them, it's just, to say it's not working is, it's a big understatement for some of them too, where it's not happening at all. And I know that everybody within the district is doing, they're trying to reach those families and help them, and we have things that are in place. And I hope that, well, first of all, I know those efforts will continue, and I appreciate those efforts. I hope that we can catch them. I don't know what else to say other than that. I know that everybody's trying and everybody takes it incredibly seriously. And let's just do all we can to catch the ones that we're not getting. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson.
Thanks, John. I was having such an appreciation for the, I think it was mostly the principals who sifted through that survey data, because it really goes from one end to the other. And the whole time, at least for me, when I was reading it, I was like, how can we help? How can we improve distance learning? And I guess because it's a question of improving, we're going to look at what's not working for the students. And we're not discrediting that so much can possibly be working, and we're not discrediting that folks are putting in their best efforts. But we do have to look at how we can improve. And one thing that popped out to me was that it really sounded like the asynchronous time can be a time of utter despair, can be a time of confusion, can be a time where parents are feeling like they are the teacher. And so I'd like to hear from Ralph, or maybe some of the principals, if there is a way for families to work with teachers to reduce the asynchronous time, if we're doing a good job communicating to families that what they need to do when they're struggling is reach out to their teacher if they're not comfortable reaching out to the teacher. And it could mean that they have such a close relationship with the teacher, they don't feel comfortable reaching out to the teacher, but that they know that they can reach out to their counselor or their principal, and that there are options built into distance learning to try to help. So that was my biggest takeaway, to try to improve distance learning.
Ms. Dawson.
Yeah, I would just speak to the procedure of this, that next time we have something that has this much information, because I found it really valuable, it would be nice to see it perhaps ahead of time. And this was one of the things I know I brought up last time, that we raced through this. And the other piece is, when we get a black and white graph, I could not possibly discern. I know, shout out to Buck, because Mr. Rogaman had put it that over near the pie graph, he would write what each section represented. So I would love to have that if things are sent to us, so that we have total understanding of what they are. And ultimately, not to be redundant here, the things that we see with a greater increase of D's and F's with the kids struggling, I just think it's great for sites to continue to evaluate everything as they have been, as far as pulling kids back on, or how do we catch them up in the future, because this is a snapshot and we're going to need more of them to see where we stand with learning loss over time during this time. So thank you. Those are my points.
Gabby.
Sorry, I couldn't find the button, but no, I don't have anything to add at this time. I think I've already asked my questions earlier, but.
Thank you very much. Board, I'd like to open up to public comment on this. The data was available in the packet and online, presentation data, the summary presentation data essentially. So hopefully folks had a chance to take a quick look, more steep as they wanted. We are open for public comment here.
John, Mr. Rogaman has his hand up.
Yes, Buck, go ahead.
Thank you, President Paff. Trustee Swanson, Trustee Carolyn, I just wanted to speak a little bit to, the comment about the asynchronous learning and when families are struggling. And I just want to put that invitation out there to our public that by all means, contact your teacher, contact me, contact a counselor, and we can work through some of the issues that you might be having with the work. I think that one of the things that our teachers have tried to communicate to our families throughout this entire process is that the most important thing is going to be the social, emotional well-being of your children. And I think we hear a lot of people suffering right now throughout this entire meeting. There's just been a lot of pain throughout this whole year. And what we don't want is for like the schoolwork part of this distance learning to create more stress and anxiety for our families. That's one of the reasons why we've really tried to reduce or eliminate the homework portion, because everything that our students are doing right now is homework. And that lessens one of those opportunities for tension to build in the household. So if there are things that aren't working for the asynchronous learning, I think our teachers will be open to discussing it with our parents to find a solution that can work for those families. So if you've been afraid to reach out to our teachers, try it, and that will work with you in order to make the asynchronous portion of the day as productive as we possibly can. I think the survey was really clear that the value of the synchronous portion of the day is much more, engaging than the asynchronous. And we know that, right? Because that's when the teacher or the teacher's assistant is live and working with the student. And so that challenges when you remove that caring, loving adult from the school situation, how do we keep the student engaged? And we're still working to try to figure out the best way to do that.
Thank you, Buck. Other public comment? Brian, any staff have their hands up literally?
I don't see anybody. I see no hands. I see nobody waving.
Ms. Luciano, please unmute Christine.
Yep.
Hi there, Christina Luciano. I am a first grade parent at Robert Down, as well as a Robert Down teacher in second grade. And I just want to address this asynchronous versus synchronous learning and the teacher's ability to hop into a meeting with a student while we are all in distance learning. I've seen my child's teacher do it. If a student is having trouble, she stays on extra time with them. I've done it myself as a teacher when a parent texts me and says, hey, my kiddo's having a really hard time. Could you pop on for a quick meeting with them in Zoom and go over writing with them? And I've been able to do that because I am able to do that in the distance learning atmosphere. And I just fear that some of those things that we are able to do as teachers to improve our students' experience and try to support families as much as possible goes out the window when we hop into a hybrid learning model where we are then bound to those times and we no longer have the opportunity to hop on to a Zoom meeting with them because we are in the classroom with other students at that time. So that's my fear as a parent and as a teacher, is that I would miss that opportunity to support my students fully in that way. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Luciano.
Mr. President, if I may,
sure.
Just because our site administrators are co-hosts, they can't raise their hand. It's not a functionality.
Understood.
So if I may invite any of who wish to speak, just to chime in. They don't have
So
to.
I've been asking Brian to let me know when someone's actually physically raising their hand. So.
I haven't seen anybody. So wave your hand. Wave your hand if somebody wants to say something.
Okay.
Sean Roach.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Principal Rogaman said and let him know that this is certainly a topic where you need to engage and partner with your school. And it is definitely a constant look at what's working and what's not. And it involves really gauging the amount of work and drawing back and pulling back if you need to. But I think at this point, it's really equally important to just continue to have these kids engaged and really make them feel, good about themselves, and to continue to kind of come to class and show what they know, and de-emphasize a little bit of what's being asked as far as the asynchronous work on Mondays. It's, like I said, it's really something that it's a work in progress, and it's something that through collaboration with teachers and input from families, it's something that you have to continue to monitor and adjust, and hopefully hit that mark as close as you can. But again, I'm just kind of reiterating what was said earlier. It's a delicate dance. You have some falling on the side that's saying this is not nearly enough, and you have some that are saying that this is way too much. And for the latter, we're really trying to find a way to have those folks on site during their asynchronous time so that we can help them directly with the issues. That's all I have to say.
How many children did you pick up in the last 2 weeks? Did you say 30?
As of Monday, we will have, I'm sorry, as of Tuesday, we will have 52 students on site.
Thank you. Ms. Ramos.
Kelly, too. I saw Sean Keller.
We'll come back to Sean then. Ms. Ramos.
Hi, this is Amy Ramos. I have 2 students at Robert Down, and I would just like to say I would love to see a survey go out to the kids. You know, we're all here to support our kids, and I think that they haven't been heard in all of this, and I would really like to see a survey go out to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Mr. Keller.
Good evening, Sean Keller, proud principal at Robert Down Elementary. Again, I'll just reiterate for the 3rd time what Mr. Rogaman and Mr. Roach have already stated. Please don't be afraid to reach out to staff. We're here, we're public employees, and we do what we do because we care about our students and our parents. And you know, there's no reason to be afraid of reaching out to us. We care about you, we love you. And I hear it from my staff telling their students how much they love and care for them. And I don't want to lose the fact that not only are our teachers working with students during async time, whether it be office hours, working with students one-on-one on a weekly basis to do formative assessments, but also our instructional assistants are working tremendously hard with our students in creating relationships and trying to provide support for students. And one thing that I just noticed based on the results for our survey was, again, not all families filled it out, but just trying to go with the statistics. Basically, there's about 35 kids that are, or families that are having a really, really hard time. I wanted to take this opportunity just to state to our community once again, at Robert Down, we are looking for people to apply for the distance learning and support positions. We only have 1 candidate so far, and we have 2 positions. So we have yet to open. I would like to urge that if Mr. Rogaman is ready to go, that we allow Forest Grove to start, because his family should not have to wait for us to start, and that I, as the principal, will step in however I can to make that work, because I know how difficult it's been for the families that are on my list. So I just want to publicly state that I don't want to hold Forest Grove back from providing support for those kids that really need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Steinbach.
Yeah, I just wanted to share some data based on the public comment about student surveys. The middle school and the high school surveyed our students that are on campus currently. And just to remind everyone, at the high school, we currently have 50 students that are on campus with our phase 1 and 2. And our phase 3, we're going to start on March 2nd. 36 of the 50 students are consistently on campus, and our survey, we received 25 responses for our student survey. I'll try to sum it up. There were basically 2 basic questions. Before joining a cohort on campus, how often did you ... And then since joining a cohort on campus, how often do you ... And the options were never, rarely, sometimes, usually, or always. And some of the highlights that I saw, 2 were kind of obvious, that attending synchronous classes were up drastically with the students on campus. Eating breakfast and lunch, we do provide breakfast and lunch for the students on campus. A couple of the others were know what work has been assigned, completed assignments, attempting assignments, understanding class material. Sleep was something that students said they were getting more of, and I attribute that probably to having a routine and coming into school. And then the two social emotional pieces that we kind of sussed out were talking to people outside of the household, that was obviously up, and feeling supported by peers and adults.
Thank you, Mr. Steinbach. Board, it is 9:56. We have one item after this. I feel we will be done by 10:10. I'd like to go ahead and make that motion that we close the meeting no later than 10:10.
I move we close the meeting no later than 10:10.
Okay. Well, that's a second, so we'll second that.
All righty then. I
Okay.
second you.
Mandy, do you need, I forget. Ralph, do I need a roll call vote on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Paff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Gabrielle, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
We'll be done by 10:10. You can move off at that. Okay, so this item is information discussion. I have nothing further to add from the public comment at this time. So board, unless you have something, I would say go ahead and speak up, and if there's two people talking, I'll appoint, but hearing nothing further,
like-
go ahead.
Tavani.
John, it looks like Jason Tavani. Yeah.
Oh, Jason, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Mr. Steinbach's comments, because we did administer the same survey, and I think we found some similar data. At the middle school, we sent the same survey to parents and teachers, and a more detailed survey to students. But every question that we asked the parents and teachers, we also asked the students. And so it's those 5 questions or 6 different questions that we were looking for in terms of how often before they came in the cohort, they did a particular thing, like knew what the assignments were, for example. And then we compared that with how they answered after joining the cohort. And so I looked at it kind of from a numbers perspective and just thought of a 4-point scale, like with grades. And essentially what we saw across the board, well, parents were most optimistic. Parents reported the greatest gains from before to after. In fact, saying that these things like they knew what work they had, they completed assignments, they understood the class material, they received help from a teacher, they have confidence in their schoolwork, and they feel supported by peers and adults. So for the parents before, that was a rarely or sometimes in the aggregate. And then after joining the cohort, that was a usually or always. So that was the largest leap. We're happy to see that parents are hearing good things and maybe seeing some other effects on the home front that indicate that what we're doing at school with the small cohorts is working. Teachers saw the same type of jump. These academic behaviors that students had done rarely or sometimes, they were doing sometimes or usually. And I've noticed this, that like we do have students on campus that like the issue isn't just resolved by them coming on campus, right? Like some of these are habits, they're patterns, they're just deeper rooted behaviors that we haven't yet been able to kind of unlock on campus. But there are many, many kids that rated themselves as being like perfect. Like I always do all of these things now that I'm part of this cohort. So those types of things really excite us. Reading some of their comments really excite us. And I'll kind of leave it at that, but I texted Mr. Roach today about something that made my day, and it was a student saying, just kind of self-identifying, that's kind of why we all want our kids back in schools, right? He said, I've made lots of friends and my mental health has gotten way better. And when you know a little more about the students, of course, it means a little bit more to see how their sense of belonging and their inclusion in school, leads to better outcomes. And so lots of debate, and I certainly understand the issue, and just wanted to let everybody know too that there's also some really good things going on in all of our schools, and they're a little underreported right now, but they're still happening. Our kids are amazing. The way that our families support them are amazing. Our teachers have been just outstanding. And I'm really happy to be working for a district that has all of that going on, because in my household, we have 3 districts, and neither of the 2 others can say all of those same things at the same time. So that's all.
Thank you, Jason. With that, we will move on to our last information discussion, future agenda items. So there's some things that were requested. I think at least one of them will be a report out. Ralph, I think the very bottom item, I think you can put down added for 2/4/21, but put fall 2021 down as a date. I think that's not going to offend anybody. We know it's not any earlier. And with that, we'll go Brian, Carolyn, Christy for future agenda items.
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Carolyn?
Thanks, John. I have all of my notes here. So let's see. At the last meeting, and I remembered it when I was reading the minutes, Dr. Hagquist requested, he didn't necessarily request, but he was asking about grading policies. Anytime I hear policy, my ears get excited because that is part of our job as board members. So I wanted to bring that up as a possible future agenda item, is grading policies, and I believe he was referring to those at the high school. Let's see. Okay, so the question earlier from a member of the public regarding our 6th graders being at our middle school, and I'm not talking about the question regarding reopening for the 6th grader. I'm talking about the question regarding having 6th graders at the elementary school level. Questions like that are so wonderful to me. They make me, think, okay, how can we innovate our district? How can we work with what we've got going on? I'm not sure if we want to put that specific item as a future agenda item, or if we want to kind of create some sort of committee or something that kind of looks for those types of innovations or evolutions and reviews them and brings them back, so that we're not having staff just randomly, whenever they pop into someone's head, address them. So that's more of a cohesive approach. Let's see here. And this last item may not be an agenda item, but you know what, I'm remiss, I didn't mention it earlier about reopening, is teacher childcare. Is that going to be something, I remember we were talking about that for when reopening happened, and I just maybe an update. So I want to bring that up as a topic, something that is important to me because I feel like we promised it to our teachers. So I want to kind of keep an eye on that.
Thank you, Carolyn. Dr. Porras, I think that you could report out to that on that last item. We don't have to put it as a future agenda. Carolyn, does that work for you?
Yeah, if it works for the other board members, sure.
Well, it's your item. So, and as to the 6th grade, this is where I got stuck earlier. There is some rationale to try and say, these guys have not actually been in that school at all. So how do we bring them back in sooner before the 7th and 8th graders if we bring them back this year? So how do we push something on that? Excuse me, I'd have to turn off my 20-minute timer. So I follow you there. I'm not sure where it goes, and your question was different. Ms. Dawson.
No, nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Ralph, do you have anything from the general public so far?
No, the only thing I have is bringing back the Governance Handbook.
Thank you.
And I suspect that'll be in the spring. And
Okay.
it would be helpful to have a date, an anticipated date that you'd like to see the grading policy at the high school come forward, if that's a future agenda item.
How about leave it open, but could you send us the grading policy or tell us where to find it?
Yeah.
The number?
I think that's where we should start. Absolutely. We already have a policy in place, so let's take a look at it.
Thank you. Members of the public, we are open to, Gabby, do you have any agenda items you'd like to add?
I don't think I'd like to add, but actually I do have something to mention. So I wasn't here at the beginning. I didn't really give an update, and I don't have a definite date for when I want to add anything, but as a leadership class, we will be preparing some type of presentation on the welcoming committee, which I've mentioned in a few prior meetings. Just an update on that and kind of show what we do with that, and hopefully try and get some student feedback, just to give you guys an idea of how new students are adjusting to the district, even with distance learning. So that will be upcoming. I don't have a specific date yet, but we're working on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of the public will hold open here. If you have items to add. Gabby, I look forward to that, actually. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Seeing nothing further, for any parents still on the call, I'd like to stress that when we talk about social interaction, the school district has kept its fields open. I would say if we are not one of the few, we might be the only county school district in the county that has tried very hard to make sure our fields are available for use for parents and children. And if you have a cohort of 3 kids or 3 children, and you shouldn't use kids, please avail yourself. We keep them open. We want to keep them open. The door should, at Robert Down, they should be open over the weekend. At Forest Grove, they're definitely open. The high school has been open. The middle school, you can't even close. So playgrounds are open, fields are open. Ralph, if you have nothing else, I'd like to close the meeting. Ralph's already gone.
No, I took off. No, it's all yours.
We're good. It is 10:08. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.